What is going on, everybody? T Flame here, and today we are gonna talk about Xenoblade 3. Yes, I already did a spoiler discussion video and a non-spoiler discussion video, and even today I dropped a video talking about the fate of Shulk and Rex in Xenoblade 3. Now, we still got a whole lot to talk about. You got to keep in mind, this game, people have spent upwards of, like, personally it took me 40 hours to beat the game. Wait, no, scratch that. It took me like 56 hours to beat the game, and after beating the game I'm like 67 hours in, doing some other some other post game things and side quests and whatnot. But regardless, you could spend a lot of hours in this game, and a person that has spent a whole lot of time in this game that is just now beating it after spending I don't know how many hours is my good friend Project Zodiac, also known as Latios 300,000 Bays. Good longtime friend of mine. How you doing today?
Hey, I'm doing pretty good. I'm a little tired, so sorry for my voice. I just got home from work. But yeah, I'm doing good, and this is actually my first live stream, so hello everybody. But yeah, it actually took me, and I actually just beat the game last night that I told you about, but it actually took me exactly 190 hours to beat just the main game plus the side quest stuff. So
That is
a lot
wild.
longer than me.
My God, yeah, a lot longer than me. Nah, but you were doing all the hero classes and everything. I didn't even know until I beat the game that all the heroes have, the extra additional ascension quest.
Yeah, the game doesn't actually tell you that, and I only found out because I was looking at an article learning about a quest, and they were like, "Oh, here's a tip. Look into this section of the menu and click A, and it's gonna tell you, what you need to do their second quest." I'm like, "What?" But yeah, so there is that. And
No,
honestly,
yeah.
those second quests are really good because it details a lot of things that you otherwise wouldn't get context behind, and you would feel like the story was missing out on or didn't explain properly, but it was there.
Agreed. I'm still doing all of them. I haven't done all of them, but I know also some of the side stories. I know there were two side stories, Mio's and Noah's, that were, I mean, technically not side stories because they were, requirements to progress the main story, right? But I just think, before we get into the discussion of the game, like, the amount there is to do in this game, granted, I think every Xenoblade game has a whole lot you can do. This game in particular, it's like, it's not just like, side quests have so much personality because, I mean, compared to in Xenoblade 3, right, they have so much more personality because, like, compared to Xenoblade 2, yes, you had the additional blade quests, right? But
Hmm.
these hero quests get you way more acquainted, in my opinion, than the blades do.
Right. I do definitely agree with that. Because these ones, I feel like it's more focused on building the world given the situation itself of how it is, whereas where the
Way more
Blade
acquainted, in my
quest in
opinion,
Xenoblade 2, it was more about only that character. And that character, like, yes, it would give you a little bit of world building, but it wasn't really to the extent that the heroes in Xenoblade 3, how their quest was.
Agreed. Um, you know, so, well, we can easily get into multiple tangents, right? But I got a couple points here. I was just checking the stream feedback. It seems everything sounds good. I just checked the sound and everything based off of the playback. You sound good. I sound good. So if anyone in the chat is having problems, feel free to please just let me know. And so, the first question I have here is first impressions after beating the game. I've talked about it, and I'll expand on my thoughts, but I just wanted to hear what because you literally just beat the game, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I beat it last night. Literally, it was like 2 a.m. when I beat it, which is also why I'm tired, because then I had to wake up early to go to work, and it was a long day at work. But yeah, I just beat it last night. And there's a lot to say about it, but you can go ahead and continue what you were saying.
No, yeah. So, I mean, first thoughts after beating the game. I feel like I made a video about this, but going into this game, it was clear it's going to be a lot more of a darker Xenoblade game because, I mean, usually in Xenoblade games, there's a clear big bad. I mean, the big bad may change multiple times, but there's clearly something you're fighting against, right? But
Mm-hmm.
here it's like there is that with the Mobius, but the difference is that like the world is very dark. People are like getting killed left and right. You know, ironically,
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there's that many main character deaths in this game, even though there's a lot more death in general. You know, there's only
Mm-hmm.
there's not that many. I don't think like deaths that are as like hard. I mean, when deaths happen, they happen, but I think the game is like it's structured in a way where even though there's a lot of death, you know, there's not like, for example, like Van Damme. Well, technically Van Damme dies in this game too. By the way, massive spoilers if you didn't already know. I mean, the title says spoiler talk, so anyway. But I
Mm-hmm.
think that it's so the ending. What makes the ending so impactful is I think really, even though you could play these games in any order, I think for those who have been Xenoblade fans for a long time, particularly you more than me, because I've just gotten to the game within the last couple of years. You know, you've been playing this game since the first game came out, and so I think that people who have played these games have grown a lot, and through growing, I think you have your own life experiences, and like, you know, particularly the ending. If you have lost anybody or any family member or anything, that, in my opinion, I think that's what makes the ending hit significantly harder than the other two games. The other two games have emotional endings, but I think what makes this one so impactful is because you see characters that are used to loss, right? You see
Mm-hmm.
Noah and Mio, both sides are used to dying, which everyone, I think, in a sense, is used to having people die. It's what happens. Yet, the difference is we see this is them losing someone that they have gotten real close with, right? You know,
Mm-hmm.
particularly you got the partners,
Right.
right? But more than that, just having the main party separate, I think that's gut wrenching, and I think that it's that sort of it's the loss feeling that is akin to when you lose somebody, right? Because the hope is when you lose
Mm-hmm.
somebody, you want to see them again, right? Now we don't know if there's something that's gonna
Exactly.
happen that maybe they'll see each other again, but as of right now, it's like they're gone from each other for all we know.
Mm-hmm. Right. So, you know, with that ending in mind too, it does definitely have that kind of impact where, you know, it's like you're saying bye to someone, but at the same time, it's a little bit different because it's not that you're saying bye to that person. You're just saying like, hey, it's gonna be a little while until I see you again, you know, but I'll see you again. So it is like a melancholy kind of vibe because you know you're seeing that person again. It's just gonna take some time.
Agreed. Because I think that that's the thing. A lot of time, well, you can compare it to Lost, but then you can also compare it. I mean, there are times when, like, for example, I've had friends that I went to high school with. I'm really tight with them, but high school ended, you know, and I don't know when I'm gonna see them again. I mean, I could see them again, you know. That's a chance, but you know,
Hmm.
this game really hits the fact where I think human nature is to want to strive to see people again, but the future itself, although you may want something out of it, ultimately it's unknown. You know, you can
Right.
want something, you'll strive for what you want, but the thing about the future is that it's unknown, and that's scary, and that's why, you know, you had N and M, well, particularly N, being selfish, wanting to perpetuate the present now, right? Keeping that, and then Zed was just like, all
Hmm.
right, sure, let's make it happen.
Right. Well, the thing with Endo, well, maybe we should get back to that. Focus first on the first point, because otherwise, because that's about like our thoughts on like, and then like the villains and their goals. So to kind of bring it back to like what I thought about the ending itself and how that went, I think it was really really well done. And you know like because so basically, you said earlier, first of all, that there's so much in this game, and that's true. So much stuff. that a lot of people aren't going to really experience. During the interviews with the developer and the producer and the person behind the Xeno series as a whole, his name is Tatsuya Takahashi. He was basically saying, like, we wanted to put so much into this game, and then like his producer is like, yeah, you wanted to put so much. Like we had to stop you from putting too much stuff because there was more things in this game than any other game. Um, so much so that the world itself is 5 times bigger than Xenoblade 2's world. But anyway, I'm saying all of this because basically what I'm trying to say is that like the story itself that they put. I read a lot of reviewers where they were saying like the ending kind of felt unfulfilled. It's like a lot of things was not resolved. A lot of things were open-ended. And as I'm playing the games, doing all the side quests, all the hero quests, and like getting the full story, hearing what every single NPC is talking about, no, I don't really feel like a lot of things was unresolved. I mean, I did tell you some of the few complaints I do have, which we can definitely talk about a little bit later. Because really, there was only, I feel like, maybe 5 things that was unresolved, but it wasn't necessarily things about this game. But again, that's going more into everything else, like the other games and how it connects to that. So yeah, in terms of what the story this game is trying to present and the lessons, I definitely think it was all really well resolved for the most part. And Takahashi had even said that he wants people that is, like the young people, just like these characters, because they're all young. So it's like young people like you and me, who's on their 20s, some who might be in their 30s, and then some teenagers, all of this young demographic, basically. He wants them to relate to these characters, and honestly, and that's what I'm trying to get into. Sorry, sometimes I ramble a little too much, but
No worries.
that's what I'm trying to that's what I'm trying to get to, is that the ending itself and the lessons that was presented, honestly, and even Noah himself as a character, it really connects with me so much, especially the things that's going on in my life at the moment, and the things that of like just who I am as a person as well. So this ending, like the initial reaction, I did cry. Not as much as I was thinking I was going to be crying, but I did cry a little bit for sure. Like actual tears, not just inner crying. Like I actually cried some actual tears because it was very beautiful and it was melancholy, and I thought that it was extremely well done. And like I said, it really relates to a lot of things that I'm going through myself and that I've always gone through in general in my life. Especially, being from a different country and having to wait such a long time to see my friends and family back home, or, in other parts of the world where I have family and friends as well. So just right now, in fact, like Xenoblade 3 has been helping me a lot because I've honestly been pretty depressed. Whenever I'm in the US, I do tend to feel a little bit more depressed than usual. But I was in a different country right now for about a month visiting some family. And right when I got back from the US, and I was just like really, really sad, and I'm still sad. But since I got the Xenoblade 3, I started playing it, and really that's what's been helping me a lot. It's playing through this game, exploring stuff, and it really makes me think of where I just was. And any moment that I wasn't playing it, it made me a little bit sadder. But playing it for a month, and a little bit more than a month, and like I said, 190 hours, it's helped me be a little less depressed, even now that I beat the game. So I can definitely say for sure, like the feeling that Noah and everyone was going through and their journey was literally exactly what I've been experiencing this whole time. So this game is a little bit more personal to me than a couple other people, for sure. But yeah, I just thought it was like a perfect, beautiful ending.
It is, and I think the thing about it is that it's one thing to have a character that goes through some hardship. That a character can have an amazing story, but at the end of the day, what would make a character just great is being able to actually connect with them, right? And I think this game goes so far to get you connected to as many people as possible, right? And that goes from not just the story and literally every single significant character having a quest dedicated to them, whether it be hero or even the main party with the side quest, right? Or the
Mm-hmm.
side stories, right? Even when you go into gameplay, you have everybody
Mm-hmm.
there, like the entire party's there. And when you get to the final boss, in my opinion, even though we can get into this later, I think Zed as a whole, a lot of people are saying he's the weakest villain. I could see that because
Mm-hmm.
even though there's build up to Zed, he's not. I think even though you can argue whether or not Zed is a good villain, I think that the boss battle at the end has to be easily, in my opinion, it's my favorite boss battle. Just because you feel it the most, right? Now,
Mm-hmm.
because you have the entire party there, and not only that, all the heroes that you have met, that you have connected with on your story, they're there
Mm-hmm.
too. So you really, I feel like in that final boss, compared to other final bosses, like with Malos, when I was fighting Malos, I'm like, I gotta kick this guy's ass. And when
Yeah,
when I was
he was
fighting
a good.
Zanza, I'm definitely gonna kick this guy's ass. But when I'm fighting Zed, I got my squad there. It's not just I gotta kick
Mm,
this guy's ass. It's we are gonna kick this guy's ass, right? And I feel like you really
right.
feel it's almost like that Avengers scene in Endgame where everybody's coming out the portals, but instead of like just seeing it, I'm playing it. And that is why, like,
Mhm.
this final boss, I just played through the final boss earlier today because I unlocked all the heroes, and man, I swear having all the heroes there, just it makes it just hit.
Well, that kind of leads into another thing that I really really like that I think that we can get into now as well. It's how alive and real this world feels because like basically like all these characters feel realistic. All these characters definitely have like a big impact on it, and you want to like, at least for me, as I was doing like all of the quests, I'm like, oh, I wonder how Colony 9 is doing. I want to like really help them learn about farming. And then like you got another colony where you're like, I really want, or I think it was Colony 30, yeah, where they're like trying to build this robot, and I'm like, why can't I build a robot yet? I really want to see what's gonna happen with their arc with this giant robot. There's just so many things like that. Or Colony New, I think I forgot the name, but the archer girl, the one inside the forest.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, them like they're stuck inside that forest. They don't know anything about the outside world too much, and I'm like, I want to see what they think about the world and like like the world itself just feels really alive, and it really made me care about each and every one of these characters, even like the regular NPCs. Um, but what you are saying right there about the final battle itself, um, it really was like really really impressive. A lot of people did not like the Zed fight, but I thought it was so good, just like you. Like, yes, just regular Zed, I mean, it was super easy after you get your chain attack back. Um, but I think it was like that on purpose. I don't think that it was like, oh, we're trying to make something super cool. No, they purposely did it so that Zed is like just holding back because he's trying to just like see what you are actually trying to achieve, and then when he doesn't like it, that's when he goes and becomes Big Head Zed that I was telling you about. And then that was just really cool. And like you said, because you spend so much time with these characters and how well written everything is, when the heroes show up, and like it's like you said, it's not just, oh, I'm doing this, like with Xenoblade 1, it was the party trying to stop Sansa from, trying to become a false god, right? And then in Xenoblade 2, it was the party trying to stop Malos from doing, like, stopping the world from, like what Malos was doing. It's trying to stop the world from ending. But with Xenoblade 3, it's the world trying to stop Mobius and Zed from, leaving them in this endless loop. And I think that that's what's so powerful about that ending with the final boss, is that, like, it is the entire world fighting against Mobius, and it was so epic. And like you said, like an Avengers Endgame moment, And when everybody started showing up, I thought that that was like super, super cool because like I haven't really played a game where the side content becomes such an important part of the final section, you know, and I thought that that was so well done. And it's like, and it's almost like the game rewards you, and me and you talked about this a lot before, where the game rewards you for doing all the side quests because again, everybody's so well written and like you get to see the colonies all have a connection with each other, and like you get to see all of them helping each other break away from the flame clock and learning about things about the world and everything like that, and it was just so well done. So the game rewards you for doing the side quests, the game rewards you for exploring because you get to see all these cool secret locations, and really it almost felt like a Zelda game where I like randomly would see a cave somewhere and I'm like, oh, I want to go and explore this place, and I'll be greeted by like this neon like avatar forest thing, which was so cool. So the game rewards you for taking time to explore, to do all the side quests, but all of that comes into effect in the ending too. Like it rewards you for getting those heroes because then it helps you in that final fight. And you know, again, it just makes it feel like this isn't just about you or your party. This is about the world and you guys working to protect and save the world as the world, you know, rather than just one person.
Yeah, and I mean, this world, like you were talking about, feels a lot more alive just because there is so many minor details that you can easily miss that just having them there make it feel real. Like being able to, you know, go around the colony and to interact with a hero. If you don't have them in your party, they'll still just be walking around the colony, right? And you know, in previous Xenoblade games, I know in every Xenoblade game, every person you talk to have a name, but here, I think it's a lot more like you actually, it feels alive. You're and then something else, you'll just be walking around the world and you'll see an enemy with an exclamation point or a monster with an exclamation point, and it'll just interact with the environment and boom, an item pops out of somewhere. And that's just like the first time I saw that happen, I was like, I was blown away because it's just like there's so many details. We got the large details, which is side content actually being a massive part of the game. And I feel like, you know, I didn't do side quests a lot in Xenoblade 1 and 2, yet we pretty much got a lot of the story. Whereas in this game, if you don't do the side content, you're missing out on a massive part of the story. And I think it's like this game really is, it's for anybody. If you want to just rush through the game quick, you could probably beat this game in like maybe 20 hours if you just go straight through and you try to, you know, avoid it.
I don't think it would take only 20 hours. I think at the minimum it would take about 40, 50 hours.
I'm talking
even
about
without
true.
Yeah, even without doing side quests, I definitely think it would take at least like 40 hours. Because the game's story, I feel like just the story itself is longer than Xenoblade 2's, and I feel like Xenoblade 2's story was slightly longer than 1's, especially considering I just rewatched all the cutscenes before Xenoblade 3 came out. And Xenoblade 2's story, just like the main story itself, was like 13 hours, whereas Xenoblade 1's with Future Connected was like 10 or 11 hours. And you know, we looked up the other day, and Xenoblade 3's is 19 hours of cutscenes. So
True.
I definitely do think it would be at least 40 hours just the main story.
True, but I just think that, okay, I still think that it's just like, you know, side content is like something that is there for if you want it, right? Like in 1 and 2, side content really wasn't integral. I mean, you had the whole colony, what was it, Colony 6 thing in Xenoblade 1, but it's like...
Yeah, I think so, but Juju's and Charlotte's colony.
Exactly. And, you know, that's cool, and I mean, in Xenoblade 2, you could try and get other blades. I mean, in Torna, it forces you to do all the side content, which is why I didn't beat Torna.
Did not like.
I absolutely hated it. But the way they did quests in this game is, it's not only good to the story, but they didn't make them like tedious. Like a lot of times, the problems with Xenoblade side quests is I gotta look up guides to how to get this item to make this one thing, in order to give it to this one person, and then I think they were not as clear. Whereas in this game, a lot of times it is really clear what you got to do, and I like that.
Mm-hmm.
But and the thing is, a lot of games I think struggle where they try to make something too clear, where it feels like hand holding. With this game, even though they make things clear, I don't think it's hand holding. It's you do what you want, and I mean they show you what to do. But I still think most of this game you do what you want though. It has a balance where it shows you what to do, but it doesn't feel hand holdy.
Hello?
Yeah, you're good.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought that it glitched out for a second. But yeah, no, it's exactly like you were saying. This one definitely makes you feel like you're actually doing something and like you're actually making progress. One of my favorite things about this game itself with the gameplay itself and doing the side quests is like, yeah, there wasn't that many memorable side quests in Xenoblade 1. There is definitely a lot of, what's it called, filler side quests in Xenoblade 1, and I know that there's like over 400 of them, but it's just mostly fetch quests for the most part. And really, like you said, the biggest memorable one from Xenoblade 1 is the Colony 6 rebuilding one. But again, even that is mostly just fetch quests. With Xenoblade 2, I did do as many side quests as I could find, and I really liked those. And they were a mix of fetch quests and a mix of like progressing and like telling stories. But for like this one, it's like I said earlier, I really feel like they did perfect side quests on this one because yes, there was some fetch quests, but you still got to learn a lot about those characters. You still got to learn a lot about the world, and it led to like basically something being like rewarded to you in the sense of you unlocked a brand new quest that is going to be like a big thing, and it's going to like tell you what you need to do, and then that's then going to unlock another quest where it leads to a hero quest, and then you have to do that quest, and you'll get rewarded because then you start connecting the world together. Like literally that is one of my favorite things. Is basically, and I guess this can kind of lead into like what we think about the story as a whole. One of the things that they did that I did not realize is like in terms of connecting the world, it's how can I say this? So basically, everyone's under the flame clock. Nobody pays attention to anything. And I remember when I was first playing through the end of chapter 1, like at the very beginning of chapter 1, you see everybody taking a bath together, guys and girls, and they're just walking around naked in the bath. Obviously, it's covered by the smoke from the fog, but they don't notice that, or like it's like they don't care about it. And then at the end of that chapter, beginning of chapter 2, once the party is free from the flame clock, I didn't really realize what was going on because I thought it was kind of funny, but I'm like, huh. Because at first, the girls change clothes in front of the boys, and then the boys are just like, because now they're not under the flame clock, they're just like all acting weird. And I'm like, what is up with them? They just took a bath together at the start of the game. Like, why are they acting weird? Seeing the girls naked and having the girls see them naked is not anything different for them. They like their whole lives all shower together. But then the guy's just like, oh, I'm gonna go and change over there, and then like they all just run out, and I'm like, I mean, it's funny, but then okay, a little sexual, sorry, but then I'm like, oh, they probably just randomly got a boner or something and just had to like run away and didn't want to go see that because they got embarrassed for whatever reason. But I'm like, but that still doesn't change the fact they probably would have gotten boners during the showers anyway, so why are they still acting weird? And again, like I understood that, but I didn't fully understand until a little bit later by doing some side quests where I noticed there was one side quest, and this is where I really noticed it. And this one guy basically walks up to Mio and he's like, hey Mio, so what are you doing later? Do you want to help me with this? And then like his assistant goes and just smacks him in the head. And he's like, "What?" And I'm like, "Wait, I had not noticed any like flirtation things before, or anybody like talking about romance, or being horny or whatever, or talking about love before." And this was like a side quest after you freed a colony. And then that's when I really, like, my theory was really confirmed that basically when the person is freed from the flame clock, they start to notice things that they didn't before. So in terms of the party, like the guys running away from the girls so that the girls don't see them naked, because yes, they did get a boner, because then they realized, oh, these are girls, they're different than us, and we are attracted to these people. And now I feel awkward, and they're gonna see me, and like they start. It's not just the sexual nature of it as well; it's the more self-aware nature, and that even starts with even the clothes themselves that they wear. Because if you do another quest, um, one of the side quests straight out tells you like, "Oh, why are you wearing strange clothes? It's against regulations. You can get in big trouble for wearing, clothes that is not provided to us, which is all the uniform." And then you free that colony, and then that colony is like, oh, now we are understanding things. So basically that's what I'm trying to say. Like, as you free the colonies, you do the side quest, you start to like really realize that all of these people did not know things before. Like, they did not realize things before. And one of like the main story stuff that I really loved is like the group is talking, and then Lance is like looking at Mio and looking at you, Senna, and they're like, why do you guys have like glowing lines on your skin? Like, and then they look at Lance and they're like, well, why do you have like a weird pattern on your skin? Like, the other two don't have that. Why does Uni have wings? So like, it shows subtly that nobody notices anything.
Yeah, no questions. Like, you see randomly there's a bunch of Hyantia that have wings in their head, and no one questions that until like,
Until
even
you
I think
free
there's
them.
that one comparison that I think is made in that one scene with Melia where they're like, oh, Uni has queens like Melia. I mean, not queens like Melia, has wings like Melia. And no, and well, something I just noticed when I beat Xenoblade again, well, not beat it, just beat the final boss again, is when you have the partner saying goodbye. Tyon says, when Uni's like, oh, you're my fourth best friend, Tyon says, fourth? What do you mean, Yorn? Did she count Yorn? And he says, wait, why am I only thinking about guys? I missed that on my first playthrough, but hearing that again, I'm like, yeah, it's real interesting. And I mean,
well, it's because Tyon was jealous. He's like,
exactly.
wait, but yeah, and that's the thing and that's exactly what I'm saying. Like, the party was still learning things. Like, one of my favorite things is the whole "who wants to learn how a baby
is made." Yeah, that was funny.
I just love that. But like that notion itself, like, even like everybody in the party, they're like, why are there small humans walking around the city? And they're like, well, this is a kid, and they're like, what's a kid? What's a parent? They were still learning things, but I mean, that's outside of their realm. In terms of like in their realm, they were also learning things. Like, they kept relying on food to be delivered to them by the castles. That's one thing. And like, for example, Colony 9, they were like, well, how are we going to survive? We dropped our rank, and now we don't have any more food. And then Xeon's like, let's grow our own food. I don't know why, I just thought about that. And they're like, how can we grow food? Is that even a thing? Like, that, that's what I'm saying. Like, outside of the flame clock, they learn things about life. They learn that you can grow food. They learn that about what sexual attraction is. They learn about what life is. They learn about how people are different and how people have their own interests. Like, yes, the game does also imply that even under the flame clocks, they still notice some things, and they still like have their own interests. Like Yorn, he liked carving stuff. Noah always said, even when he was under the flame clock's control, he always said that one day he wanted to make his own music. So they do have some individuality, but it is so limited that it's basically like the expression tunnel vision, and they're only limited to a few amount of things. But then outside of the flame clock, and that's one thing that this game did so perfectly, was really showing how the world starts to learn about what it means to be alive, what it means to be human, and outside of the like fighting and killing, like what it means to actually live. And I just thought that that was so beautifully well done,
Yeah.
especially when you look at Noah's story as well, like Noah and Nem's story.
And ultimately what it means to grow. And to
Hmm.
grow means you can't stay in the present now. That
Hmm.
whole forcing things to stay as they are, that just does
Hmm.
not work. And I think that the ending of this game, I think, is, if you had to compare it, I'd say the ending is a lot more similar to Xenoblade One's ending, and the idea of that, it's the cycle that's broken, right? Granted, I think
Hmm.
there are different cycles, but it just shows you that if you try to hold on to like that whole like forcing things to be in a particular way for selfish desires, it doesn't work. It really doesn't.
Hmm.
And I think that's a
Well,
go ahead.
but that's what I was gonna say. It's the Xeno games as a whole. So for those of you that are watching that don't really know, short history, geeky video game history lesson. The Xeno series is not exclusive to just Xenoblade. Basically, Takahashi, who's again the creator of Xenoblade, he's been trying to tell this story since the 90s with a game called Xenogears. I actually did make a video detailing this exact thing that I'm talking about on my channel. It's a two-part video, so I definitely recommend you guys watch that
Link
because
in the description.
well, yeah. I do explain it in a like shorter way than sorry, in a little bit more in-depth way than I'm about to explain. But basically, he's been trying to tell the story since the 90s. He hasn't really been able to fully tell the story. There was an art book that was released called Perfect Works, and there he kind of outlines what the six-part story was going to look like. So it was Xenogears, then he tried it again with Xenosaga, and then a lot of people don't say it, but I mean, sorry, a lot of people don't agree on this, but it is very, very clear. And if you see my video, you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. Even though Xenoblade 1 did not originally start as a retelling of this story, towards the end of development, it ended up becoming a retelling of this story. And then it fully became a retelling of this story with Xenoblade X, 2, Torna, and now Xenoblade 3. Um, but again, it's a retelling. It's not the exact same story. It's a reimagining retelling of the story he was trying to tell. Um, so he's been trying to tell this story for over 20 years. And, you know, the Xeno series as a whole always touches on the same exact themes, concepts, and ideas. And again, if you watch those videos, you're going to see a lot of those similarities, including characters and story plots and everything that is the same across all of them. But in Xenoblade, you know, one of the things that it talks about is like Xenoblade 1, it wanted, you have to be free to choose the path that you want to go on, right? Xenoblade 2, it's about being true to yourself. Whereas in Xenoblade 3, like the message that it was trying to project is exactly what you said. You can't be stuck on the now. You have to have faith and move forward and chase your dreams towards the future. And, that somehow will work. Um, that kind of leads into what I wanted to say, where I started my little rant right now. It's that Xenoblade 3 also touches on the spirituality nature of it, and like you were saying with how Zed and and everything, they wanted to be stuck on the now, and a lot of things about spirituality, because all the Xeno games touch on spirituality. In fact, in Xenosaga, you actually even see Jesus. There's actual references to the Bible in Xenogears, Xenoblade, and not just Christianity, but also Judaism, Gnosticism, and a couple other things, as well as psychology. So all these things mixed together, and that's one of the most interesting and really cool things about the Xeno series that I really love, because I do believe in God, I do believe in spirituality and the supernatural. Um, And I also really love science, and I really love psychology and philosophy. So all these things mixed together for me is like really, really cool. And a lot of the concepts that I believe in and understand is also presented in these games as well. So one of those concepts is like, as you were saying, is that you can't be stuck always on the present. And even Mio told M and N, like, it's natural for you to want to be like have this moment forever, like a happy moment with somebody, or listening to a song forever. Like it is natural. That is something that people instinctively and naturally do. But the important thing is to know that yes, you can have this moment again. You can have it again, even if it's not in like this moment forever. You might have a moment with this song again, or this date that you're having with this lover of yours. You can have such a fantastic date again. Like that's basically what it's trying to tell you, that like you can't always be focused on just the now. It is important for you to live in the present, not be stuck in the past, because that's another thing that the games really touch on a lot. And we can talk about that in a minute with N. Um, but it's also like, yeah, you can't be stuck in the past. You have to be in the present, but you have to accept the present and live in the present. But don't think that the present is all there is. Don't try to have the present be just the present, because the future's supposed to come and you have to move towards the future. And that's a very, very beautiful lesson too. And a lot of people, especially like here in America, where people just work, for them it's just the now basically. And that's kind of like what Zed was doing, where it's the fear about the tomorrow. That's why so many couples sometimes break up, because they're so scared. They don't know how their relationship is going to go, or they don't know how to pull through it, because they're just stuck on that now. They don't. Yeah, I mean, it's always more complicated. So it's always more complicated when you get to relationships, but I'm just talking about this particular moment. um so it does definitely become a lot more, like things like that. Like some couples don't know how to push past the moment that they are in to go towards the future together. Some people don't know how to like, um, they don't know how to get out of a situation they're in, because they don't look for a way to get out. They just stay focused on the now, and honestly, that can also lead to depression. So, and that's actually kind of what happens with N. That whole moment when N realizes that that M dies, at the end of chapter 5, beginning of chapter 6, he goes into a deep depression because he does not know how to move forward.
He's
And that's
forced to move forward. Like, he's been
right.
stuck in that moment for so long that, that's the unfortunate part is when you get stuck in that moment for so long, you're going to eventually be forced to move forward. And when you're so stuck, N is the perfect example, like you were saying.
Yeah, like for N's case, like he when M died, he literally broke down. He literally had a meltdown, and then after that fight with him, you just see him, and it's kind of symbolic. He's literally in a pitch black room with only a little light hitting him. They did that visual on purpose,
It's
It's
literal
not because
what depression looks like. It's what depression, like, literally that is like the most picture. Like, when you think depression, you think someone just sitting there defeated, looking all like that. Is just, yeah, that symbolism is perfect.
Exactly, like Takahashi, and the way that he writes, the dude is a genius. Like there's no way around that. But he really is amazing in storytelling. And as I was saying earlier, his ambitions are so great, but like the studios which Xenogears was with Square Enix, and then Xenosaga was with Bandai Namco, or Namco Bandai, I forgot which version it is. They would not allow him to fully show his ambition with the story, so it was always rushed, or it was always cut short. But with the good thing with Nintendo is that Nintendo let him tell his story uninterrupted this time. And we can talk about that towards the end based off of the points that we wrote out of things to talk about, because there's a lot of stuff I'm surprised Nintendo let slide with this one.
A
Coming
whole
from
lot,
Nintendo.
a whole lot. Like
Yeah,
after beating this, it's like, whoa, this is a Nintendo game.
yeah. And Nintendo straight out proves of it. Nintendo said, you guys are free to do what you want. We're not really gonna put restrictions on you guys. And the game shows, not just this game, but all the other Xenoblade games as a whole, which I'm very, very grateful for. But that, going into what I was saying with the Endless Now and Z and N, and it also ties into the spirituality, and that's one thing that I kind of wanted to talk about. It's when we find out the backstory about the reincarnation. I thought that was really good, and according to a lot of reincarnation theology, and I do think that there is truth to it. That if we reincarnate, maybe it's to pay for something from a past life. Maybe it's to learn something new, or maybe to help the world in a different way, or there could always be many different reasons for why a person reincarnates, right? And I think it's mostly about either helping the world or evolving yourself to go forward, or to pay for something from the past, and a couple other reasons as well. And the game actually does touch on that, and we do see that, which I thought was really well done. And it's, again, not the first time that Xenoblade touches on reincarnation. They do touch on reincarnation in Xenoblade 2. They do touch on reincarnation in Xenoblade 1. It's just a little bit more subtle there. But it is very, very touched upon in Xenogears as well. Again, not going into details with that. But, with N, we see his past lives, and we see him, like, being reincarnated over and over and over again. And then we get to that scene where, like, some people, when you study spirituality, like, some people say that you do see your whole life. And I do believe that too. I think that you experience the things that you went through. And the game also kind of shows that every time that N kind of died, he did get to see, like, his life before he was reincarnated again. So again, that's what I'm saying. Like, this game does touch on things that I do believe in and things that I do study as well. So it's really, really cool for me, But what I'm trying to say is that as he was, like, reliving his lives and coming back, you do see N is always selfish. He's very egotistical. He's always focusing just on him. And, he would betray his friends in one life. In the other life, he would betray his girlfriend, who is the love of his life, which is M. And it's sad, And then there's a few ones where he's a little bit better, but then he would do something bad, and then, and then he reincarnates because of the cycle. And then basically what I'm trying to get to is that at one point, and this is what the thing that I wanted to talk about, and I wanted to hear your thoughts on, is when Noah dies, or at the end of chapter 5 when he's decapitated, right? And then he's in that cloud space, and then he starts reliving his memory, and then a figure appears to him in this space, right? And this figure is basically a kid, and it's basically Kid Noah, and he's wearing a cloak. You can't really see his face, but you could tell it's a boy. And he's, like, walking Noah through these past lives. And this kind of touches in on something that we're going to talk about a little bit later. But basically, I think that is the true higher power. And I think that true higher power was there talking with Noah, guiding Noah through his past lives and showing him, this is how you were. And now this is that previous past life, the big one. And then this higher power does tell Noah, you changed. You were getting better with each incarnation. But then something happened. And then we even see, like, N having a kid with M. And it was beautiful, and, like, that's where the higher power is like, you got better, you changed. But when M died in this life, you went back and reverted to how you were when you died. And then basically what I understood from it is that then Zed appears to N's spirit and, like, basically takes his spirit and makes N a Mobius. So I think, like, Zed is kind of like a lower power, let's go with that term to explain, the concept behind what I'm trying to explain. Um, but then Noah becomes a Mobius, or N becomes a Mobius, but then this higher power is still showing Noah like the what happened. And then here's the reason why I think it's actually the higher power of the Xenoblade universe, because first of all, across all of the Xeno games, you basically meet the higher power in all of the Xeno games, and the higher power is, it basically tells you that it is the higher power, and then it leaves and watches over the world. In Xenoblade, kind of similar to what happens in Xenogears and Xenosaga, there is a false higher power that's kind of trapping the actual higher power. Again, it's a little complicated. Watch my videos where I do go into a little bit more explanation about that. But so in Xenoblade 1, the higher power was Alvis, because that was a world created by the conduit, right? And Alvis leaves. We don't know where Alvis goes. And then there was Sansa, who was the false higher power. In Xenoblade 2, the higher power would have been Klaus, except that he himself says that he is not actually the higher power, and that he's being punished by the actual higher power for the things he does. And like, that's an actual quote-ish, not those exact words, but he says that his state of being is probably retribution for what he caused by the higher power. That's basically what he says. So the higher power is a focus in the Xeno series. So I think that the entity that Noah was talking to when he is supposedly decapitated is the higher power, who is now, actually watching over everything. Again, Klaus kind of got in the way, I suppose, and the higher power was punishing Klaus, and then Klaus died. And then the higher power was able to come back to its, actual position. So I think that the higher power was talking with Noah and telling Noah, you changed, you got better, but then something happened. So much so that when it is showing Noah basically ends and Zed's conversation where N decides to become a Mobius, the higher power is up there on a balcony watching over. And Noah even looks at that, that entity there. So it makes me think that like the higher power knew everything that was going on, and that was watching everything, and being the higher power. But then we get to the very ending of that reincarnation explanation scene, where the person wearing the cloak that looks like Kid Noah turns into M, or Mio, right? So a lot of people were saying that this character is Mio all along. I personally think that M did use her ability to enter Noah's space and kind of show him all of this. But I also think at the same time, right when she activates that ability is when N is about to decapitate Noah. That's when the higher power kind of comes and talks with Noah first, and then it leaves. But when it leaves is technically, because it is a mind space and time flows differently there, when it leaves is when M and Mio both appear to Noah and basically like free him. And she was kind of telling him what the higher power was going to tell anyway, but for her it was her, but N was at first talking with the higher power, and then it kind of switched over to allow M to talk with Noah, and then it was M basically. Does that make sense? I don't know. What are your thoughts? Do you think Noah was talking with the higher power at first and then it became M, or do you think it was M/Mio the entire time during that scene?
During that scene, I think it was Noah talking to a higher power, just because I think in pretty much any religion you look at, the idea of the higher power does not necessarily have to conform to certain rules. Higher power can take whatever shape it wants to, right? And so, could it have been Mio? Maybe, or could it have been like M? Possibly, but I think there's more. It's more clear that it's a higher power because you're seeing all of N's memories, right? And Mio would only have access to her own memories. She passed those on to Mio. So I don't think Mio would be able to show N everything he does. Mio is clear, knows everything that happened, but it's from her perspective. And I think that given the context and the way everything is, right? I think it's you're in the clouds. Just I think that's very symbolic of what people would think of when they're speaking of past. You know, the idea is when someone dies, their life flashes before their eyes. That's what I think was happening, and it was a very deep conversation, or just a lot of showing Noah, and I think just the way everything unfolded in that scene, I think that was Noah's conversation with the higher power ultimately. And I mean, it would make sense it'd be the higher power because even though Zed is the lower power, as you put it, there's no real, I want to say, false god that could stand in the way. Like I mean, you could say Zed or the Mobius, but Zanza isn't there. There isn't an inherent controller of the world, right? And so I think that having that be out of the way gives more room for the actual higher power to, you know, come in and influence, right? Or just show, you know? And just the whole reflecting and growing, you know, showing someone the error of their ways. I think that is very that's very spiritual. That's a very spiritual experience that makes me believe it would be more so higher power than specifically Mio.
So you would say even at the end where that being turns into Mio, that was still the higher power, and you would not say that was Mio at the end, like the very very end when they wake up in the world and Noah's still alive.
I mean, wait. So, well, I think the higher power may manifest itself, manifest himself into Mio. I think once we get back to the physical world, that's where Mio kicks in, right? But I think before that entire projection, maybe Mio's spirit was present there, but I think it only goes back to being Mio once we get back to the world itself, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I do think throughout most of it, it was all the higher power, except for like literally the like last 3 seconds where Mio does appear in the clouds and like says let's go, and then it takes it back. I think that particular part, it was Mio, but like you said, her spirit then entered the realm when she was so yeah, for her it was like at that particular moment, and she does know that Noah went through everything, so it's like for her she kind of tried to tell him, but for Noah he was actually talking right before that whole entire time with the higher power that was trying to explain to him and trying to like set things back to the way it's supposed to be. So like that's why I was even asking, so Noah, are you gonna make the same choices again? What are you gonna do now? You know, like that really does seem like the higher power was telling Noah, like, your girl is about to like call for you right now, so I'm asking you this before she enters this space. That's what I think it was kind of like, you know?
I agree. So
Yeah, because a lot of people do think that it was M or Mio the entire time, but again, if it was, why was she in the I'm gonna say it in Portuguese, it's called roupagem, but that basically means like the outfit or the costume of Kid Noah. Why wasn't she just Kid Mio? Or, like if it was Mio the entire time, why would she be appearing as Noah? you know,
Exactly.
to Noah.
Agree.
So I mean, yeah. I mean, clearly it was not a girl. I'm not. It doesn't have to be Kid Noah. I'm just saying it kind of looked like Kid Noah. We don't really see his face, just his like mouth, and his voice kind of sounded like Kid Noah. But so that's why I'm saying Kid Noah. But it was definitely a boy. It wasn't a girl, you know.
Agree.
But
So,
and you know,
oh, go ahead.
no, and I was just gonna say, but you know, like that's what it leads to. Is like, you know, and that's another beautiful thing about the game is like you can choose the path that you want to go. You know, like you've learned from your mistake. So are you now gonna follow the same mistake, or are you gonna do or are you gonna do something different? And I love Noah's answer to the higher power, where he was like, I don't know. I want to do something different, and I'll try to do it differently. But I don't know if that path, you know, is what's gonna come. So I definitely think that the higher power was trying to show Noah, like, I'm helping you guys to get things back to how they're supposed to be because you guys are stuck, you know. But what are you gonna do? Are you gonna go the same way and stay stuck, or are you gonna do something different? So I love that Noah's answer was, at this particular moment, I'm not sure. I'm gonna have to wait and see the steps that come, and when those steps arrive, I will try to choose what I think is right. You know, and I thought that that was a really beautiful answer and a very honest one too.
Because, I mean, yeah. And I mean, that's, you're not gonna know. And I think that's what life is, trying to, going towards the future and not being certain, knowing that you have the chance of making a mistake or doing something that could potentially hurt someone, that's scary and something you wouldn't want to deal with, which is what we know is what, why N was so focused on the holding on to that moment. But I think, Noah being able to accept that he doesn't know, I think, and then by the ending, people accepting that the future means you're gonna get hurt sometimes, you're gonna you're gonna there's gonna be painful moments, but that's what it is. And if you try to, you can't, like we were saying, you can't you can't really be selfish. I mean if you want to be selfish, at the end of the day, the only person it's gonna hurt you, and it's gonna hurt everyone around you, but that's by being selfish, but you gotta go beyond that, right? And at first, when Melia and Nia asked the question, like, are you sure you want to proceed and let the worlds go back? I mean, we could just hold it. And Lance is like, shrugs it off. It's like, of course we're not going to become Mobius, At that point, we're like, yeah, no, of course we're not gonna, we didn't do all this just to leave, right? But then it's like, in that moment, knowing that you would have to ultimately sacrifice, that is a reason why people, not everyone would be able to move on with the future. Not everyone would be able to be okay with, letting go. And I think this game has a whole lot of messages. Like, there's so many messages we could get. But I think given the conversation with the higher power, given the events that transpired through the end, I think the main takeaway, I guess, my main initial impression, and I think the main thing to get out, even though there's a whole lot you can get out, is just, you gotta be true to yourself. It's okay to not know. The future is scary, but all you can do is just go forward, and that's about it.
Exactly. And just to finish up this part of the conversation, with what the higher power asked Noah, he's like, I will try to do something different, but I'm not sure if, in the end, I'm going to go the different path or what will happen, because I have to wait and see. And then at the end of the game, like you experience, by that time till the end of the game, you experience so much stuff, a lot of things gets revealed. And even N, who appears to Noah, he even changes too, So it shows that everyone can change. You can learn, even if it takes so many lifetimes or so many years. You can always change. You can always grow. And I thought that was beautiful. And with that said too, basically, Noah did make a choice, and he did decide in the end. At the moment, he gave an honest answer where he said he wasn't sure if he would make the same choice or not. He would want to make a different choice, but he would need to see what else would come, right? And in the end, he's like, yeah, I know exactly what to choose. He did hesitate a minute because he wanted to see what everyone else was thinking. But that's the thing, that's a beautiful thing. Unlike N, Noah was not alone. He he literally looked at his friends. He did hesitate. He was like, should we stay in this endless now? Because that would mean I get to stay with Mio. That would mean Lance and Senna get to stay together. Uni and Tyon and everybody in the city, they get to stay alive. Like, should we just stay? Or even though it is wrong because the worlds are basically in a limbo, basically in purgatory, should we stay or should we let things go the way it's supposed to go? And that's why he hesitated, and that's why he looked at everyone and asked, and they were like, well, it's up to you. We want things to go back to the way it's supposed to be, because that's how it's supposed to be naturally. And so like Noah did have that little moment of a dilemma, like, should I, or should I just, not? And he did do the different choice because he grew. That was part of this reincarnation. He moved on from being stuck in just the present, and he let go, and being able to let go of the past and being able to move forward, even like you said, even if that meant that he would not see Mio or some of his friends for a long time, and I thought that was just beautiful, that he made a choice and his choice was different, and it was the right, correct, better choice.
Agreed. I think we'll pick up on this later, but I think that's just heavily reminiscent of Xenoblade 1, where Shulk and his friends, I can't be a god. And then they're like, no, you're not a god. That whole scene just reminds me of like that ending where Shulk is talking about the world and everything. That just calls, I think this is callback to that. And I just like how there's a lot of, clear references to both games. And, I have, the next question I had here was, what questions do you have after beating the game? But I think I want to come back to that one. Something that was mentioned in the interviews that I was a little nervous about before Xenoblade 3 came out, it was that you could play this game and it could be your first game. And given the way everything was set up, I didn't think that was possible. Playing the game, I see it, but I want to get your perspective. Do you think legitimately this could be someone's first Xenoblade game?
Actually, yes, and that's something that I had, because I started playing the game a little bit before you, and that was actually some of the first things that I told you, like, wow, there's already so many references, but it's not like, like if you know it, you're gonna be like, oh, I know this building, or oh, I know this location, or this item, or whatever. Like, the references are there, and you are definitely rewarded if you know the story, if you know the characters, if you know everything else from the past Xenoblade games. But at the same time, even though this is technically a sequel to all of these other Xenoblade games, it does 100% stand on its own. Like, you might be a little bit confused at the ending, especially with like, what is up with this sword Melia has? What is up with these people in this picture that Nia has? Why do they keep referencing this and this? Like, what are they really talking about here? But it is like just subtle things where it's not like a big deal, It's just kind of like, okay, I feel like this has some big meaning to it. Don't understand it, but it doesn't take away from the actual story itself. So that is one thing that I really, really praise the game, and it really shows just how well Takahashi has progressed in his writing, because again, Xenogears was supposed to be 6 parts. And some people say it's supposed to be 6 different games, because Xenogears, the one that we got, is part 5 of the Perfect Work story. Some people say it was supposed to be 6 games. Some people say it's supposed to be a multimedia project. Point is, we only know the outline of the story itself. And we only got the original Xenogears, which was part 5 of this series, of the story. With Xenosaga, so basically we don't really know a lot about Xenogears, right? Like what the other games would have looked like if they would be able to stand on their own. But Xenogears as a whole stands on its own. Xenosaga, it was supposed to be 6 games. Don't know how much of the Perfect Works story it was supposed to tell, but in the end they had to cut it down to 3 games. And again, because of limitations and the studio itself wanting the series to just be done with, so they kind of had to condense it, and it basically covers parts 1, 2, and a tiny little bit of part 3 from the Perfect Works story. With that said, though, those games, even though they were Xenosaga Episode 1, Episode 2, Episode 3, they kind of don't stand on their own as individual games. You need to have played the other ones to really understand what is going on, because they also don't have a lot of information in game to touch on what just happened in the previous game. So it's kind of like watching Avengers Infinity War and then watching Avengers Endgame. You can definitely watch Avengers Endgame and get a lot of enjoyment, but you're not really going to understand what they're talking about because you did not watch Infinity War. Like you're like, how did they get to this point? Who is this dude? What just happened? Why are they on this planet? It seemed like they weren't there before. So like, you definitely needed to play the games in order. And what they did try to do, especially with Xenosaga 3, is that they put a huge think of it like as a series Bible kind of thing, where it had like all of the like notes of the previous game, of the previous story. It had notes of the side stories that was exclusive to like an online website and to like an old like early 2000s mobile phone game. So they had like I forgot the actual term, but let's just call it like glossary of every single term, every single concept, everything in Xenosaga Episode 3. And if you're jumping into Xenosaga Episode 3 to try to understand just what is going on without reading those things, then no, the game does not stand on its own at all. You need to read those things, and if you don't, you're gonna find some enjoyment, but you're gonna be totally confused. Now with Xenoblade, thankfully they learned how to still have it be fully connected, but you not needing to have all those previous games knowledge. So it did not do what Xenosaga did, but it also did what Xenosaga did. So it did not do the thing about it being so dependent on the past games that without the past games knowledge or even some understanding, you would not have any idea what's going on. So thankfully it did not do that. But what it did is that it made it kind of dependent on the past games for you to understand the context of the world and the references that they're making. But you would still get these concepts even if you don't play the past games. So they definitely mastered this for sure, and I think that it does definitely set it as its own game for sure.
I agree. I've watched your Xenogears videos, and I know that I remember you telling me about the glossary in the third one, and personally, I think this game is cool, and I think you could definitely play without playing the other 2 games. But my only thing is, this might be a really, really nitpick thing, but I really think I think anyone who's a Xenoblade fan, I think would of course recommend playing all of the games, of course. But I think it's like, this game, even though you could play it on its own, the gameplay and everything, I feel like in order to fully appreciate this game, you gotta play them in order. And I get that's just the Xenoblade in general. I think in order to appreciate it the most, you gotta play it in order. Just because I think the game evolves so much between each game. Like, for example, Xenoblade 1 combat, I mean, it took me a second to get used to it, but I think going from 1 to 2's combat, it's a completely different system, but I think 2's combat is a little bit more refined. But then when you go into 3, it's like the combat is refined, and I think it's just, I think in order to understand all the different changes, not even just on a story level, but just from a gameplay level. Gameplay wise, I think Xenoblade 1 is the hardest. Xenoblade 2 can get challenging because there's a challenge. Well, everyone has challenge modes, right? But I think, in Xenoblade 2, there's ways to get, like, you can do the elemental burst and whatnot, right? I think there's ways to do that. Whereas in Xenoblade 1, I think it was a lot more. I mean, I feel like you can feel Xenoblade 1 is a little bit of an older game. The story's amazing, but I'm talking about just gameplay wise. I think it's a bit dated. And then once you get to 2, it's like, okay, look, picking up the speed a little more, even though 2's combat feels a little slower at the beginning. But then in 3, just having the best combat, if you had to go from 3 to playing 1, I can't imagine. I feel like if someone tried to play Xenoblade 1 after playing 3, they would struggle and probably not beat 1.
That's true. Like, a lot of people say that 2's combat was so slow. I love the combat for 2. I never had a problem really with it. Maybe like a little bit in understanding the elemental thing in the beginning a little bit at first, but not too much like most people did. I just love the combat in 2, and I still prefer the chain attack for 2 over the chain attack in 3. So in terms of chain attacks, my favorite is 2's, then 3, and then 1. I really don't understand the chain attack in 1, and I've been playing 1 since it came out in 2012 in the US. So
the chain attack in 1 is like, you gotta be positioned in order for it to work, which technically in 2 and 3 that you would have to be positioned too, but in 1 it's like, it's so specific, and it's not like it
doesn't tell you where you are in the
it doesn't
too.
no,
like,
and you got to get lucky essentially.
Because like you might think that you are right behind the monster, but no, it would actually still count as like a side attack, and I'm like, no, I'm like right there. If you just move one little step to the right, you're behind the enemy, but because you don't, you're still doing a side attack. So yeah, I did not like that. But the complaint with the chain attack from 1 is that I never know how to keep the chain attack going. Like, it's either I don't understand how they explained it or they didn't explain it. But for 2 and 3, it's so easy to really understand. I mean, I did struggle a little bit with 3, just because, again, I didn't really like the chain attack of 3, but when I went into the tips and it broke it down a little bit more, then I understood it. And now I really do enjoy the chain attack for 3, so my opinion on that did change a little bit because I got the concept a little bit more. Well, I still miss the chain attack of 2, and I really miss the announcer saying, like,
awesome, yeah.
Or things like that, yeah.
I would like 2's chain attacks more, because I think I like 3's chain attacks the most just because it's the easiest to understand. But in Xenoblade 2, whenever you get like a full burst, when you get the elemental burst, it's so satisfying, right? To bust all the orbs and everything. The only problem is the game doesn't tell you how to do it, which is why I didn't learn about. The main reason why I struggled a lot in Xenoblade 2 is because I didn't know about the chain attacks. I thought they were stupid because I never got them to work. Anytime I tried it, it would just be 3 attacks, and then I couldn't res anybody, and then I die. And so I didn't like that at all in 2. But then at the end, once I realized, oh wait, I could freaking full burst and easily not kill any and easily knock out any enemy. Once you understand how to chain attack in 2, really you can beat any enemy. I just think. Go ahead.
But you also did like, I remember like when you started playing 2, you were just like ranting on the combat as a whole for 2, and I'm like, it's so much better than 1. Just trust me, just keep playing.
I did. I hated it at the beginning. I was stuck on the first fight with Malos, on the
Mm.
on the ship for like I think like a couple days. I literally was just
Mhm.
I didn't understand it, and then because I didn't understand arts canceling. But once I understood arts canceling, I swear canceling like 3 arts and just oh my god, two's combat is so much more satisfying than one.
It
But
is, and it's like you said too. Like if you're jumping from three straight to one, you're gonna be like, why does this feel like a very, very old PC game? Like, because that's what one was kind of based off of. It was kind of like an open world MMORPG. Because I used to play a lot of those, and just the like, selecting the attacks is kind of like in that same layout. So you're like, so if you jump from three to one, you're just like, this is so slow. Why is this taking forever to like load? I'm just doing like, auto attacks, and then you like hit the art, but then you have to wait for it to recharge, and it would just take forever. So it definitely is like a big like shock when you're going in terms of combat from three to one. I think if you go in terms of three to two, it's not going to be too much of a shock. Probably just a chain attack might be a little bit of a shock, but well, with two, you already had like the blade set up on like the right, D-pad, and then you have the arts on the left. Sorry, flip that. You have the arts on the right D-pad and the blades on the left, and you kind of already have that with three as well. But instead of blades, it's still more arts on the left side. So I think that if you go from three to two in terms of combat, you'll definitely like it a little bit more, except that the combat in 2 does start a little slow for sure, even compared to 3.
agreed. I think Xenoblade 3 combat wise is significant. It's essentially Xenoblade 2's combat, but like better. I mean, the most
Right.
because you got arts canceling, you got I think
Fusion arts.
exactly, and a lot of that I think is like it's two's combat, but a lot more I want to say defined. But then they got rid of the elemental aspect, which in the grand
Mhm.
scheme of the way the world works, it makes sense why there's not elementals.
Yeah,
Well,
it does.
but you know,
No,
um,
it does, because the blades aren't a big factor anymore, and at the end of 2, the blades were kind of rewritten. So I guess they might not have the elemental
which I
side.
said in my theory that I released before the game came out. But I think didn't I say that as soon as I beat 2? Like something about like I feel like I've been talking about Blaze having kids with humans ever since I
Oh,
beat 2.
we'll save that for a little later.
Oh, okay. We'll say that.
Because that goes into like the last 2 points. But I just want to, so we can finish up on the combat and like going off of fully experiencing 3. Yes, you're definitely gonna get the most out of 3 if you've played the other 2 for sure, because it is dependent on it in some way, but not for you to at least have the story make sense to you. Um, with that said, though, it also makes sense to play the games a little bit in order, even though you technically don't need to. But what I really like about 3 is that it doesn't just blend the worlds, it also blends like mechanics from the 2 different games, even like the combat itself. Like you have arts that charge up by hitting from Xenoblade 2's world, and then arts that charge up by time from the Xenoblade 1 world. So I thought that was really, really well done. And it is rewarding you for playing the other games, because you get these mechanics plus its own new mechanic for just playing the other games as well. So yeah, you're definitely gonna appreciate this game a lot more by playing the other 2 games, but I still think it is able to stand on its own as well.
I agree. So, I think we'll circle back to that second point, which was initial questions you have after beating the game. And I have an idea of what you're going to say, but the main question I had that I was thinking about when I was drafting these points, what I was thinking about that I don't think was explained that much is the Annihilation event and the Black Fog. I think, well, looking at it, the Fog King from from Future Connected. I know the interviews around Future Connected was that the Future Connected is supposed to set up the future, and so
Mm-hmm.
having Fog, clear connection to the Fog King. But like, I really don't think they explained or talked about the annihilation of. I mean, they show the annihilation event as being the things where just the world randomly things pop and then holes in the world are gone, and then the black fog is just all around Melia's castle, which I think it's only really centralized around Melia's castle. If you, there might be there's multiple other places, but in terms of like, I didn't see black fog in the Agnes castle, nor in the Cloud Keep where Nia was sleeping. So I think it's interesting to see black fog be focused where, the fog creatures were in Future Connected.
Mm-hmm.
But that's one of my main questions that, they were scared
Well,
of an island. Go ahead.
no, I was just gonna try to give the answer to that, but I thought you were done talking. But go ahead,
Oh
continue.
yeah, no, I was just gonna say I don't think it was explained as much. I mean, there's probably something mentioning it, but I think it was something that was, it was a pretty big part of the story, especially when you had the whole idea of that we had to stop that weapon from being fired because it could recreate the annihilation event. But
Mm-hmm.
once you get deeper into the story, it's kind of like the last time you see it is Nia and Melia are using it on Origin.
Mm-hmm. So, in terms of the Black Fog, though, I do think it is a little bit explained, and I think halfway through chapter 2 is when I started telling you like, oh, because I thought that you were gonna pick up on it. The Black Fog was basically part of the Fog King, because the Black Fog definitely is related to Future Connected. Um, so it is a little bit explained, but it's not very clearly explained. Basically, Mobius comes from everybody's wills and fears about the future, and it basically shot up because again they were designing Origin for a few years at that point, right? Um, so so basically it was like everyone's fears about like what will happen. Will we really be, like rebuilt? Will the world destroy Origin? Like I'm sure like there's so many fears across two planets right next to each other that their wills just created Mobius. Um, but honestly, I think that this fear and Mobius starting to be created happened all the way at this, like starting 1 year after the worlds ended. Sorry, right after Xenoblade 1 and 2 ended. Because that's when the fog beast started to appear in Xenoblade 1, right? And the world was brand new. There was still a lot of confusion as to what was going on. There was still a lot of worries. Um, so I think that right then, with these two worlds that were supposed to be one, with nothing separating them anymore, because again, that would be those higher powers that weren't there anymore, and then the actual higher power started bringing things back to how it was supposed to be. So basically, like people started worrying about like the future of their world, and right there is when I guess Mobius starts. So the Fog Beast was probably, and the Fog King was probably like the very first few Mobius that started appearing. It was the manifestation of those people's fears about what was going to be happening. And then what, as centuries went on, I'm sure, or I wouldn't even say centuries, because reading online, some people think it's only been 20 years since the end of the first two games. So some years later, two whole planets' wills of fears getting closer and closer together, and then Mobius just came and decided to take over. So that's basically how they explained it. So the Black Fog and the Fog Beast are technically part of Mobius and like the first manifestation of them, I guess.
That makes sense. And then I guess off of that, the annihilation events are just the the world instability.
break. Yeah, well, yeah, exactly, because they said that the world was dying, the world was already being corrupted. It was like a patch, like a rushed patch job that Zed did. So the annihilation event is like, the Mobius, basically like the fog version of Mobius, the ones without a like consciousness, I suppose you could say, um, causing the fear to happen. Like the fear, like, oh, the world is, being destroyed. Again, it all relates to their fears of the future. And that's basically what it was, the uncertainty of what would happen to their future. And it just kept like manifesting over and over again. And that's actually leads into another topic that the Xeno games do talk about is, that saying, be careful what you wish for, be careful what you think, things like that. I believe those things, like you have to be careful with what you think because, that vibration might come. You have to be careful with what you wish for because that vibration could come, and that's basically what that is. Like they were not wanting a universal thing to be happening, but it was still a want. They shouldn't have been focusing on that, and that led to their fear, and that kept growing, and they just kept thinking about it, and then that's what led to Mobius being manifested, basically. So again, it's got many different names and different like religions and different practices and different philosophy as well, or even metaphysics, science stuff talks about this type of thing. So like people's thoughts are actually very, very powerful things, and you can influence things. So that's why you should be careful with what you think. You shouldn't really wish bad on people. You should treat people how you want to be treated as well. Like even the Bible talks about things like this, so it's something that has been recorded across human history since the beginning, basically. So what I'm trying to say with that is that that's basically what explains the annihilation events. It's people's fears of uncertainties, and that's all they were thinking about: destruction, 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 and their world being destroyed, and that's it. And their wills is what kept bringing basically Mobius, which is basically the Black Fog, which is basically the Fog King, to be like causing these destructions, to be causing the Mobius to be created, to be causing Ionios to be made, and all of that. So it was their wills and their fears and them just thinking the same things over and over again that caused all of this to keep happening.
That does make sense. And given Future Connected and how it was mainly focused on wrapping up Melia's story, Melia was very insecure and had a whole lot of fear. And so I think that on top of a lot of other fears makes sense as to the manifestation of Mobius and Zed and the Black Fog, the Fog King. So, alright. That was my main question. I know there's other questions we can get into about what... I mean, the thing that I want to say after I beat the game, but I wasn't able to say, was that I feel like the ending leaves way more questions than actual physical answers. I think there are answers to certain things, but given everything that happens at the ending, and given the ending of the first two games, I think there's a lot more to ask than is actually told. Like,
honestly, though, a lot of people did bring that up in their reviews. I don't think so. And again, that leads into like you having to do all these side quests and really see this full story, because so much stuff gets explained. Like, for example, what's her name? Uni. Her whole situation about like how affected she was by seeing her past body, and like how that traumatized her. That, there was only that one section in the game, and then they like bring it up slightly later on in the main story, but then they bring it up one more time, but she's like already past that fear and stuff like that, and she like grew, like her point of view changed when they were fighting D and J. And but then if you didn't do Uni's side story, you wouldn't realize why she changed her mind and how she's more comfortable with this situation because it gets explained there. So but yeah, what do you think is like? I mean, I definitely have some questions as well that I would ask in a little bit, but what do you think is left like unanswered for the
You,
most part?
I mean, not. I mean, I should have clarified it. In terms of the game, a lot of things are explained within the game. I'm talking about more so in terms of like the Xenoblade universe. That's mainly where my
Oh,
questions are.
okay.
Not necessarily with
Hmm.
the game, because the game has a lot of answers to how things happened, right? But I'm talking more so
Hmm.
like within the context of the game, it makes sense. But then when you start factoring in that like the conduit, this happened after the conduit disappeared, which I think was maybe probably the main thing keeping the world separate, right? And
Hmm.
then you got to think
Right.
about how like someone had to have built Origin. I mean, I'm not sure if Origin
Well,
was
it's
just
basically
manifested.
no, no, no. It was already explained
Oh
at the
wait,
start of chapter
yes
7.
it was, yes
So
it
the
was. It
two
was built
worlds
by.
communicated.
It was
Yeah.
through Origin. Yes, I forgot about that. Yes, you're right. But I mean, I think my main questions are, the worlds were merging. First of all, how did Nia become royalty? Melia makes
What?
sense, right? And then
Well, Melia was already queen,
exactly, so Melia makes sense,
but
but then
Nia, yeah, Nia. I'm just like, out of all of the characters from Xenoblade 2, how is it that you became the queen? Like,
honestly, I'd expect Bridget more so than
yeah,
it.
Bridget. Yeah, no, and not even that, but like, why is she so different? And then she like at one part when the party leaves, she does like a big like jump and like fist bump in the air, and I'm like, okay, there's the Nia we know. And like as you play the game, she starts to like as you like keep going through the game, she starts to show more and more like old Nia, and I'm like, so you're basically just playing an act, like you're still you.
And
And I just love
yeah,
like
agree.
Bumpy Nia, like
It's so
yeah.
interesting to see her because we know Nia is a very explicit and
Nia is very punky and very like loud spoken, so I have no idea how they
and
chose her to be
so
a
to
queen.
see her trying to fit in some sort of like regal manner where you have to see her consistently be like, oh, I'm sorry, let me speak
Yeah,
properly. It's just it's really funny. But the question is that like,
yeah.
how did that happen? And is she technically an Aegis because she has both swords? Or are Aegises even a thing because blades aren't a thing
So
anymore?
here's my theory. So here's my theory with that. She's still a flesh eater. I don't think that those swords are actually the Aegis swords. I think that because again, if you go to the statue in the city where it depicts Rex, it says that he was carrying the two swords. So he was carrying Pyra and Mithra's swords as like an adult fighting Mobius. So Nia definitely does not have the swords. Rex did. And the swords are probably no longer like Aegis blades. They're probably just regular blades because um, of everything being changed. So I'm pretty sure that Pyra and Mithra had probably died because again they were brought back to life. And I think that they just became not even regular blades. I think they just had the core crystal left in their chest. But I think that they were just basically humans, kind of like how Rex was a human, but he had you know,
The
the
little
core
part of the
crystal on
core
his
crystal,
chest.
yeah.
Yeah, but he wasn't a blade eater either. He was just a human with a core crystal on his chest. So I do think that they just became human, but still had the ability of calling their blades, for the most part. So yeah, you can say that they just became regular blades that might not like resurrect or might not go back to their core crystal at the end, because again the architect did change things. So and Numa did die, and as a final gift the architect let her come back basically, right? And remember how like we were confused about So are Pyra and Mithra two separate beings now, or is that just like an illusion and they're just gonna become one again after, right? So it was then confirmed that yeah, no, they became two separate beings completely. But we'll get into that actual thing in a minute, because that leads into the photo. But um, what I'm trying to say is, I don't think that they are Aegis Blades anymore. Nia definitely is still a flesh eater. Uh, and I think that those swords are basically because she manipulates water. I think it's just to honor Pyra and Mithra.
You know, I think that does make sense because I think that, you know, during the time of the game, Pyra and Mithra would canonically be dead because if they were alive, I think, well, if anyone
Well,
from
keep in mind, talking about the world of Ionios, because if we get into time and how long it's been, it's going to be a little confusing right now.
true,
If we
true,
touch on it
you're right,
now
you're right,
instead of
right.
at the end of the video, at the end of this live stream. So in terms of the world of Ionios, they make it clear that it's been at least 1,000 years. When during the homecoming scene, robot Nia says for over 1,000 years, you know, I've seen, you know, 900 of you reach homecoming. So it's definitely been at least 1,000 years. So yeah, Rex, Shulk, everybody's definitely probably dead at this point.
I yes, um, I agree. So, um, you know, I guess the game, like I was saying, resolves a lot of its own points. I think the only real questions that can be derived are from, you know,
The
looking at the
connections with the past games, yeah.
exactly looking at the universe and trying to put all the pieces together, which
Mhm.
technically we're not done with Xenoblade 3. We got the DLC, but we'll touch on that way later. Whole nother video, whole nother topic. Don't even want to get into it. But I know
Yeah.
that this game, we're technically not done with it, but I just think
Mhm.
there's a lot left up to interpretation, and I think that, you know, if I know you were telling me a lot of people saying that the ending was unfulfilling and whatnot. Personally, I thought the ending was fulfilling, but
I agree.
the only time you get questions is you gotta like start digging, you know, beyond the, you gotta start digging
Right.
really deeper. And you know, I was watching a video that was breaking down where old locations are, and this
I think
guy,
I have that video saved
yeah,
actually. I
and
haven't watched it yet, but
he
yeah,
was
go ahead.
pointing out how you can see the remains of Gormont. I forget where,
Mm-hmm.
but he pointed it out. I'm like, I'll
Yeah.
be damned.
Mm-hmm. Well, my biggest question is, what is up with the giant hands? Like, I mean, is that probably from Morardain? Because there's like two giant hands, like randomly. Like one is right in front of right across from the Mykonos sword, and then the other one is like, you can kind of see it looking at Uriah, but from like right around where Origin is, kind of. But anyway, yeah. So there's a couple of things I'm like, this definitely looks like it's something from one of the games, but I can't really pinpoint. But then there was a couple other things where it's like, oh, I know exactly where this is from.
I think I was exploring the desert hand, the one in near Colony 4. That one's 100% the Mechonis one. I was exploring it and
Oh no,
whatnot.
that one is the Mechonis one.
But
There's even a
the other
side
one,
quest where
I
they
know the
say the
other one you're
Mechonis.
talking. Yeah, I know the other one you're
Mhm.
talking about, and I think it would only make sense if it was more ordained.
Well,
Um,
yeah, because it's brown. It's just straight out like a rock, and that's what Mordain's body looked like. It was just like a brown, humanoid Titan.
exactly. When you think of all the other Titans, there wasn't really another Titan that had a definitive hand. All of them were kind of like more
Mhm.
animalistic. Moradane was the only real humanoid Titan.
Right.
So,
But and then some of the questions that I had at the end of the game really was like, we didn't like what actually happened to Elvis and the Conduit, because like I my biggest disappointment,
I'm
or
still
one of my
listening.
biggest
I'll be right back.
disappointments, yeah, one of my biggest disappointment, it's that we didn't really get any information on the Conduit, and I guess it makes sense when I'm like, we really got no information on the Conduit at all, or Elvis, even though Robot Melia says my Aegis at one time, and I'm like, so the Aegis are going to be involved, but no, the Aegis weren't involved in anything. So I was a little bit disappointed with that, but that's also just because the Aegis and the Conduit are a very big important part of the Xenoblade series. But considering that the Conduit disappeared, and if we talk about the Conduit, it basically appeared in Africa out of nowhere, and it's almost as old as the Big Bang, or it's as old as the Big Bang, then it kind of just makes sense that it would just leave because it was kind of being trapped there, and it would just go to a different plane of existence or a different dimension. And it does also make sense that Elvis would have left with it, so it makes sense that when we see the two of them for the last time in Xenoblade 1 and Xenoblade 2, it makes sense that, like that was the last time we saw them because they went somewhere else. So it probably wasn't needed to see them again. But I at least wanted some kind of, like information on like Elvis, or at least the other two Aegises, which would be Pyra and Mithra, which you even made a video about that. Like, Pyra and Mithra are the only ones left, and Elvis too. Like, so are Pyra and Mithra and Aegis still? But as I just explained, I don't think they are anymore. Um, so I think if anything, they would just be a regular blade at this point. But that's basically like my thought on that, and that's why I did write that as a question. But at the same time, when I thought about it more, I'm like, okay, that can already be explained. But like, my biggest question is then like, what happened with Shulk? Because we at least get information on Rex, and we'll talk about that at the end. But what happened with Shulk? Because in the city we see the statue of the founders, and then there's that one statue that looks exactly like Shulk, and then another statue that looks like Dunban. But a lot of people online are saying that the statue that looks like Shulk is not Shulk, it's just some random person that they freed from the flame clock. And the dude that looks like Dunban is actually Shulk. I have to go back and read the description of the Dunban one, the one that looks like Dunban, to see if it is Shulk or not. But either way, like, if it is Shulk, if the Dunban looking guy is Shulk, or the other guy is Shulk, what happened to them? Like how did Rex Shulk's arm get damaged if he had the replica Monado? He didn't have an actual Monado, so why was his arm damaged? Yes, it says that the Dunban looking guy damaged his arm wielding a red sword. Again, it implies Dunban because Dunban had his arm injured while wielding a red sword, which would be the Monado at the start of Xenoblade 1. So it just doesn't really make sense for me that Shulk's arm would also get damaged wielding the replica Monado that he built himself. So that's why I'm a little confused. Which of the two is actually Shulk?
That.
Oh,
go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say. So, like, yeah, like, what do you think actually happened with Shulk? And there's a thing I want to add into it. I just wanna. It's about a painting. I don't think you came across this painting, but it kind of leads into the picture that we get at the end, too. But yeah, what are your thoughts on like this particular, like, what happened to Shulk? Do you think he and Fiora got together? Do you think what do you think happened with the Xenoblade ones? I think that was like one of the biggest unanswered things.
So, alright, I'm gonna answer this as if I did not do Melia's Ascension quest. I'm not even gonna say anything about it. I'm not gonna confirm or deny. I'm not gonna confirm or deny. I'm not gonna confirm or deny.
So hold on. So for everybody listening or everyone that'll be watching later, I just beat the game yesterday, and I just unlocked Melia and Nia as heroes literally at 2 a.m. yesterday. That was like the last things that I did. So I have not done their quests. So I do know that they do touch on some other stuff, but that's why he doesn't want to explain it to me right now, which I'm grateful for.
Exactly. So I'm gonna answer it in the context of I didn't do anything beyond. So I actually went back and I looked at the statues earlier today, actually, and looking at it, the reason why I think the one that looks like Dunban could be Shulk, it doesn't make sense why Shulk would lose an arm. If anyone lost the arm, it makes sense that Dunban would lose an arm. However,
well, I mean, Dunban did lose his arm.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's like they might as well cut it off and replace it with an actual.
Right.
Yeah, it would make sense.
Yeah.
And given the ending of one, they're gonna have access to a whole lot more tech. Well, we know there's a whole lot of technological advancements. I mean, hell, look at Melia's army. But the only thing that I note is when you look at Rex's statue, the one that we know that the other one is Rex. The one that we know is Rex because it says he wielded 2 great swords, obviously being the 2 Aegis swords. Well, if anyone wants to be an asshole, they could say he could wield 3 swords because Neo's sword, but we're not talking about that, okay? Shut up. No, I'm sorry. But it says that Rex, because it looks like adult Rex that we see in the picture, it says Rex lost an eye.
Yeah, he did. That's what it said.
Which doesn't really make sense. I mean, it could have been in a battle. It could have been in a variety of ways. Maybe when we see Kamaravi do some freaking Naruto freaking when what's the guy Itachi's friend when freaking Itachi's friend dies, Shisui, when Shisui just rips his eye out, we get that. But you know, I think that, you know, an eye for an eye, an arm for an arm. I'm sorry, but I think that it would, if it's like, oh, Rex lost the eye, Shulk lost the arm, they both lost something. That's something that could equivocate, because I can't really see they're doing, oh, Rex lost the eye and then Dunban lost the arm, because it's like you would want to connect, because each Ouroboros is a pair, right? So I think it's clear that Shulk and Rex would interlink. That's just that's what it would be.
I don't fully think so, just because the pairs that we've seen is always a guy and a girl.
You know, but I was looking at that. However, the thing is that we see, I don't know if it's just limited to Mobius, but we've seen 2 male Mobius interlink.
That is true with D and J, for example.
So, and then Yorin and crazy Blade dude. Oh wait, that is D and J. I'm sorry, that's D and J. I didn't even realize. Yeah, yep, D and J.
I think that is a little bit different though, because and it touches on to the psychology nature that the Xeno series as a whole has, and I do touch on this as well in those 2 videos that I made, especially that second video in this particular thing I'm about to say. But basically, the concept about 2 people like being one, and how I do think that for Ouroboros at least it has to be a male and a female, because one of the concepts behind the Xeno series is how every male has female essence in him, and every female has male essence in her. So like characteristics, behaviors, sometimes it's a little bit more present than the other. So that's why I think that when it comes to Ouroboros, it is supposed to be representative as a male and a female. But maybe with Mobius, it's like too much male inside. Like, you know, they have no sympathy, or too much female. They have no like whatever. I don't know. You know, so that's just me thinking out loud. That's why it could be technically that for Ouroboros it might need to be male and female, but for Mobius, because they are not part of that same concept, they are, you know, able to do that differently. But sorry, that's just me rambling. Go ahead, continue.
No, yeah, that does make sense. And you know, I think it would have to. I think there's 3 men and 3 women in this in the statue room, because even though there's only well, there's 2 clear statues of women, right? You got the one that kind of looks like Mio. You got the other one that The only character that one looks like is Numa, but obviously it's not Numa. It's just she has a ponytail.
Yeah.
And we know the third female is the one that constructed the one that lost the arm. We know it was a female because it says Ouroboros candidate. This is her,
Right.
making because she admired dude, right? So
Yeah.
if it's male and female, the only thing that is like male and female, I get it, but I'd be interested to see how it kind of like happened, because we haven't really seen Ouroboros candidates be connected with someone and have it not be romantical, which I think in the context of the worlds coming together, I think the first Ouroboros candidates, because they already had it like pretty much figured out, which is why they were able to Mobius. So I think maybe the potential conflict of of like new partnershipings, but I don't even think we need to get into that topic. That is like a whole nother thing in and of itself. But I think that, I know you were asking how did they die? How did Shulk die? I mean, it says he died of old age. How did Rex die? I genuinely think that it was like they were the first Ouroboros candidates, and then they were the creators of the city.
Keep in mind, some of those statues are the first Ouroboros, the founders, and then some of them are their mentors. The one that would be that looks like a dumb band would have been a mentor. It wasn't the statue of the actual person. Same thing with the one of Rex.
True. So I think this could easily get into I think we're at the point where this point about answering potential answers to what could be gets into DLC territory, which is going to be a separate discussion. But I mean, if we just mention it, I think there is, even though there is a lot answered, there is enough that could go on where we could get a Torner or Future connected. Don't know what that's going to be yet, but I think they left that part ambiguous on purpose, because it's like, think about it, we got like two candidates that we don't know what they look like.
Well, actually, I'll get into that in a little bit, because that has to do with the painting that I was mentioning earlier. But so let me ask you this: would you say there is at least some answers as to what happens with the Xenoblade 1 people from what you've played?
Yes, there is.
Okay, all right, that's good. That's good to know. And were you at least satisfied with that answer? Hello?
No comment. There's things added in the additional hero quest at the end. But it's not, you got to keep in mind, these hero quests are not, they're still around the same length as a normal Ascension quest. So
of course,
it's not, it doesn't fulfill everything, but
well, I mean,
it's a little extra.
Kind of like, at least give us some basis, kind of like what the picture did.
Yes.
So you would say it does give you some basis.
Yes.
Okay, then that's good.
Agreed.
That's all. That's all that was needed, because otherwise I would have been very disappointed.
Speaking of pictures, what other picture are you?
No. So not yet, because.
Oh, not yet.
Yeah.
All right.
Oh, okay. So we'll get right to that. I do have a few other questions. So, what happened with Noah's kid, or N's kid? So, because like Noah dies, or N dies, and then he just leaves his kid, his 2-year-old kid, in the forest with a sword. So like, what happened to him?
That is a genuinely good question.
Why would you take your 2-year-old kid, when you know you're about to disappear into thin air, to the forest?
And you want to know something interesting about that? Is I don't know if they explicitly said this, but I know everyone has 10 terms, right? And at the end of the 10th
Right.
term, you get sent off through your homecoming. But we
Right.
never really see, outside of Noah and Mio just passing away and fading, is that after your term is up, you just fade? Because that's the only time we see it. And then, so that's the only time we see it, because we see the homecoming is like the supposed to be send off to after you get your 10 terms done. So is it like,
Mhm.
if you don't have your homecoming exactly at, do you just poof?
Well, remember what I forgot who it was that said it. I think it's definitely one of the Mobius. I just forgot which one. Um Also, what did you think of the Mobius as a whole as villains? Did you like them? Yes or no?
I think they were, some were a whole lot better than others. Some were
That's
like,
true.
some were a whole lot better than others. I think Mobius are good way to have a amount of villains, because in order to have the hero quest, you need to have the villains, right? So it was a good way to get villains, right? And then have the
Right.
Mobius level increase, which I don't even know what that does. But the only problem I would have, the only problem I have with the Mobius is how, you know, a lot can just be like, I feel like there was like a couple Mobius where it's like, oh, you want to destroy the flame clock? I'm the Mobius. I'm finna stop you.
Mhm.
I'm gonna get big. Woo. I feel like there was at least like 3 or 4 Mobius that were just there
Yeah,
for being there, which
that's true.
I, but I can't even knock for that, just because the way the game is structured. I think
Hmm.
it would be hard, and given the limitations and certain things, fully fleshing out every Mobius is like, I don't think it's possible. But you know,
Right.
I think for the moments that you get them, I think specifically for the Mobius that maybe have a little less character, they establish the fact that they are really bad, arrogant, and full of themselves. Like pretty
Hmm.
much every Mobius fight, arrogant, full of themselves. Like for example, the one that you fight that has what's the one that looks like Charlotte but has the arts like Dunban. I forget her name, but the one right outside of Melia's castle. That Mobius
Oh, oh,
doesn't.
her.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that Mobius doesn't necessarily have a lot of. I mean, you hear him talk about orders being disobeyed, but there's not really a lot of development. But we know the Mobius is just out
Hmm.
there just being an asshole. So I think they do a good job, So I think Mobius are
Yeah.
good.
I like
There are
I
flaws,
like the
but the
Mobius.
flaws aren't, I want to say, inherently that bad.
Yeah, no, I definitely like the Mobius a lot. I thought that they were pretty good. I think that a lot of people criticize them too much because they knew exactly what they were doing with the Mobius, and I thought they did a pretty good job. Um, but with that said, I also kind of forgot where I was going with. So I know that we were talking about Noah's kid, or N's kid, and then how did we get here again? I know that then I
I
started
said
talking
something
about
about a
Mobius, and
picture.
then I asked.
There's a picture. You said we gotta hold off till later.
Well, no, yeah, but then I asked you about Noah's or N's kid, and what happened to him. Oh, okay. Now I remember. Now I'm remembering. One of the Mobius tells the party, like, "Oh yeah, once you reach your 10th term, you no longer reincarnate, right?" So but we then find out that N was able to reincarnate through Noah, but at the same time he became a Mobius. So he became Mobius, uh, but his spirit is also able to reincarnate. So what I don't think that if you reach your 10th term, you become Mobius. That's not what I think at all. I think that once you reach the 10th term, um, yes, like you're sent above, I suppose, and you don't reincarnate anymore. But if you don't go through the ceremony of being sent off, I think that you still do follow the reincarnation thing. Because they were very specific when they said once you reach homecoming, you you go. So that's the thing. So I don't know. I think that that needed a little clarification of like, how is it that if once you reach your 10th term, you're able to come back in a way, because that happened with Noah and Mio too, a couple of times too.
Agreed.
So so that's definitely a
I
question
think
for
I
sure.
think that answer could be, I think that it's because the continuous now that that gave life to Zed, I think were no ends ambitions, because if you think about it, the world being continually recycled, the way it was formatted was particularly because of N's desires, right? So I think the
Hmm.
reason why N and M were able to continue to reincarnate and be the main examples of that is because Zed is fulfilling N's desire. More so than, I mean, you
Right.
could say present now and whatnot, but in terms of the present now, the only figure that we're seeing that is really upholding that or who that's benefiting is N.
Hmm. That makes sense. And I guess it makes sense too, because again, if we go back to that higher power being present during that conversation N had with Zed after N had died, I think that the higher power also intervened and made it so that N could reincarnate as Noah to try to change once again, and kind of like had his shell basically be N and let the spirit be Noah. But that's just a theory. I'm sure I can come up with an answer if I think about it a little bit more, but um yeah, I need to think about it a little bit more and analyze a little bit more to get an answer. But going back to N's kid, I've seen a lot of people say that he was actually one of the original founders. Um and that he was one of like the first Ouroboros, because again, if you go to the statue, there's that guy that looks exactly like um like Noah, you know, and Noah's kid looks like Noah.
That'd be
So,
crazy. That'd be
so yeah,
wild.
I think that that theory makes sense. But then again, the statue says that it is said that that founder is siblings with the statue that looks like Mio. So does that then mean? And again, this was also something I saw online, that the people talking about this is also saying this particular thing. So does that mean that Noah and Mio actually had two kids? But I don't think so, because they would have shown the other one.
Unless
And
N
also
and M.
keep in mind, the kid was like, so basically that would have meant that if they had another kid, that kid would have had to been a year older at the most, or think about it like a year and a half, because 9 months pregnant. So that means that Noah would have had to been, or Mio would have had to been pregnant at around, at the earliest, if they had another kid that's older than them, um, at around age, because she's 20 when she dies, right?
Yeah, about yeah.
So probably like 18 when she had the first kid, or maybe 17 and a half. Um, so then that would mean that Noah was like 16. Which honestly, the Zeno series does touch on a lot of taboo topics, but again, we'll get to that at the end.
No,
Um,
yeah. But I mean, there
but
are those
yeah,
two
so
statues that look. One's Noah, and then one looks like Mio.
hmm so I don't know. So do you think that that could have been Noah's kid? But if it was, then that would mean that they had a second child, but that doesn't make sense with the time frame.
Man, you know,
Unless this kid ended up is not that one, but is the dad of that statue. And then like he ends up meeting a Gramadi girl and having a Gramadi daughter and son.
that also is a possibility. But I think, peep this. What if I don't know how, but like Noah and Mio were there. Were there. Wait, never mind. That no, but even then, that
But that could be the
no,
case, you know. It could
but
be
the
that it
thing
was
is,
them.
the only reason why I think that the statues can't be Noah and Mio is
The
because
siblings.
when the worlds merged, we know that's when N and Mobius. I mean, that's when Zed and Mobius appeared.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning that the fight would have had to. The founders would have had to been fighting at that point, and so Noah would still be a kid when that fight happens.
Right. But we're
So
not too sure. But keep in mind, we're not too sure how long they were fighting for until it reached the point where everything was developed and the whole rebirth cycle was implemented. Because, so for all we know, Noah could have grown up outside of it, and then they got his DNA to do the rebirth, and then it just kept going.
true, true, true.
Because again, it's been over 1,000 years at least.
I think this is gonna be one of those. Well, could be
It
a
could be
DLC
DLC,
answered
yeah.
question.
Could be DLC, which we'll talk about another day. So moving on to the last question that I really had, but before I forget, um, I'm kind of disappointed that we don't get a Aegis red or white sword, but we do get the Monado
I
as the
think that's
costume for
because
Noah's sword.
the Pyra Mithra amiibo didn't come out yet.
Well, no, but the game itself, at the end of the game, you get the Monado.
What?
So, like, for example, yes, you can unlock the Monado by scanning the Shulk amiibo, and I had the Shulk amiibo, but I didn't scan him because I wasn't sure if like it was gonna default to just the Monado itself. I mean, it wouldn't make sense
Oh
for
no,
it
you
to,
have to
but I was
manually
just scared
change
it
it.
would. Yeah, so you did scan it, right?
Yeah, I scanned it. You have to manually change it.
Yeah,
It's under
so
through the clothing option.
right. So what I found out is that when you beat the game, one of the things that you unlock is the Monado. So even if you don't have the Shulk amiibo, at the end of the game, you can still have that as a cosmetic thing.
Oh, I didn't know
Yeah,
that
so
because I already
that's why
unlocked
I'm
it.
saying. Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. So I'm a little disappointed that they didn't add the other two, the Aegis blades, you know?
You know what? I don't know if
Unless,
that's
of
a
course,
new
it is
game
gonna.
plus. Is
No, I don't think so. Unless, of course, it will be locked behind Pyra and Mithra, and it will be like you do need the not DLC, you do need the amiibo for this, as opposed to the Shulk one where it's like you can get it early, but we're giving it to you, you know?
you know what? I
Um,
think that could be a bonus for maybe completing the DLC, maybe because I know Xenoblade does the thing where beating something unlocks things.
or well, isn't there supposed to be more costume options coming out for the DLC?
True, there is. They were supposed to get at least
So it
two
could
more
be something like
clothings.
that. Yeah, so it could be something like that, but that's getting into DLC, which we won't be talking about right now.
Anyway.
So, the last question really is, so I know that you did not play Xenoblade X, which I've been telling you should buy it and play it, but I did get you to watch all the cutscenes for it. Do you think from the cutscenes you saw, there was any connection at all to Xenoblade X? And
The
then
life
we
hold.
can get into the. Well, yes, that's the biggest one, but hold on one second. So let's just talk about that real quick. Then we can talk about the painting that I'm talking about, which leads into the controversial but not controversial picture at the end, and that I think that's the last thing that we have here as well.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, so yes, Origin is basically the life hold, 100%. Same concept, same idea, just different design, because the life hold was in the shape of the conduit, but Origin's just a sphere. So other than that being a similarity, how do you think they connect?
Mm,
Hello?
yeah, I was thinking about it. You know,
Oh, okay.
the only I feel like these games are gotta be connected in some way, right? I mean, clearly they are. They have to exist somewhere in the world, right? I know,
Mm.
based off of the combat I saw, and one of the heroes isn't Gray kind of similar to certain aspects in X? Like he's the only guy I think that has guns, and doesn't he have the
Mm-hmm.
whole? I don't know, but I know that's a little bit of a stretch. But other than the clear one being the life hold, potentially being connected, I would say that you know the idea of like worlds being destroyed is something that, well, in this world technically worlds weren't destroyed, but it was more like people escaping, but I still
Right.
think that like worlds merging and then clearly being multiple worlds out there, because I think this is the only time we see Xenoblade, like the Chronicle series. Well, Xenoblade Chronicles X is, but you know what I'm talking about, like the main. You know what
Right.
I'm saying? This is the first time they really talk. They show like multiple universes. Like we see it in two. Like in one, we see a world being formed, and then you see
Mm-hmm.
the space station, and then in two, you see the space station again. You see, there is a lot of space present towards the end of both games, but here you physically see worlds poof. And I think that that's something that X touched on. Well, not necessarily worlds merging, but that whole outer world element, that whole
Right.
extraterrestrial sort of thing, that was touched on a lot in X, and that's the connection that I could kind of make. But other than a life hold, I really got nothing.
Well, for me, and actually, maybe we can talk a little bit about this, but we'll save it for right after, because otherwise, I'm gonna forget what I'm gonna be saying again. For me, the connection was definitely the design of all the gears, the outfits for the clothes, the
True,
robots.
true, true.
All of that is basically the way that it was in
Oh
X.
yeah, yep, yeah, it
Um,
is.
Another thing is the music as well. There's some music which is we should definitely talk a little bit about what we think about music, which is what I said. Let's save that for once I'm done with X. But so the music, there's some songs that are very electronic based, and again, it goes back to what we were talking about earlier. You are rewarded for playing all the other games because it's not just the worlds that's merged, it's not just the stories that's merged, it's not just the combat that's merged, but even the music itself is merged across all of the games, and that includes Xenoblade X. So I thought that that was really, really cool. Um, and also, like you said, the guns. Gray is not the only one with guns. So he's the only one of the party with a gun, but you see soldiers with guns, very similar to Gray's guns as well. Um, and yeah, and even like the way that the city looks as well. Like I remember when I told you, like right when we entered the city, I'm like, this looks very similar to New LA's layout. Um, so I don't know. There's definitely some similarities there. And it kind of just makes me think maybe they got the information about the life hold from Xenoblade X. Maybe, Xenoblade X, um, Elma kind of passed it to them and, they gave it to them. Um, Maybe Ionios was actually was Mirror all along in a way. Um, Given how there's like the imaginary world and the material world, um, in in the um in the themology of Zeno as a whole, again, it's another concept, which is also a philosophical concept as well. I think it's the number world or something like that, and not necessarily imaginary. Anyway, um, so it could be that it is all connected to X, except that with X, it's more of like this is what happened on this planet, and the information was then it's transmitted to them in Xenoblade X via the connected unconscious. I believe that's what it's called, which again is another term, which basically means everybody's connected and some of your thoughts. are actually from your ancestors to us that got passed down to you. It's a little complicated. That's a very simplified way of what it actually is. So I don't know. I do think in some way there is some sort of connection to it, even if it is very, very small. I definitely do think it is basically happening in Xenoblade X. What happens with Xenoblade 1 and or what's going on in Xenoblade 1 and 2, but just in a different planet, in a different time, right after Klaus's experiment.
That, wow.
Because also think about it like this, right? So maybe it is not connected directly to it, but it's set in the same universe, just happening at the same time in a way, but not at the same time. I mean, like a slightly different version of the story, right? Whereas Xenoblade, so basically, it's not doing Xenoblade X. What I'm trying to get at is maybe Xenoblade X did happen. It is part of like the beginning, like part one of the Perfect Work saga, and just like how we see part one, which is Klaus's experiment, blah blah blah, all of that. And then they leave. But because Alma came to Earth, gave the humans the technology and the information about the life hold, and Klaus passed everything down to Para and Mithra, they're the ones who gave that information to Tora and Nia in order to like start building Origin, right? So maybe all Origin does originate because it actually does come from Alma passing that information down to humans before Klaus does the experiment. So that's what I'm trying to get. Maybe they kind of have the same situation where they put humans' information on the life hold, and then it just happened to be that the stuff for Xenoblade X happened, and that's why it doesn't connect to it because it's in a different planet, but it influenced what happens in Xenoblade X. In Xenoblade 1, 2, and 3.
Oh my god. I don't even know what to say. I didn't even. Wow.
So I think that does technically make Xenoblade X connect to it.
Wow. That.
But of course, they don't really say that when they're explaining how they started creating Origin, but they didn't even go into too much detail about how they created Origin anyway, so it's still possible.
No, I agree. I think.
And honestly, I just thought about this as I was saying it. I had I did not think about that through. I just kept saying random stuff, and then I guess it just makes sense for me.
I think people keep saying Xenoblade X isn't connected, but I think it's like, why would they make a game with it not having a purpose?
Mm-hmm.
Knowing Monolith Soft, the way they work, everything they do has a purpose. We may not be able to fully like understand all of it, but it has a purpose. And I think the proof that they didn't forget about Xenoblade X is having Elma appear in the DLC of 2. Obviously well, I don't think the DLC is canon. You think it's canon. But anyway, that's a whole nother discussion.
No. I say that I know it's not canon, but I like to think it is. I know that DLC is definitely not canon.
Exactly.
But I like to think that it is.
But I think just having Elma show up there proves that they didn't forget about X. If they forgot about X, Elma wouldn't have shown up there. They show Elma there.
Yeah, but then again, it also, like this theory that I just came up with, it would make sense why the city and the layout and like their clothes are all also extremely similar to everything in X, because that's how it was before they left Earth and before Klaus did his experiment. And if he passed everything down to Para and Mithra as they were as Numa, then it would make sense that they would work together to make this this new like the new city, that they would work together and make new clothes new style, all of that. It would make sense.
These are where all the bodies went, and Monica is Elma's daughter. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
But anyway,
Yeah, so those were my theories. So do you think that that theory has some basis? Do
it
you think that that's how
has.
Xenoblade connects?
It makes sense, but I think the community would be like, I think too many people are hung up on no, X is its own thing. Personally, it makes sense. I think
Mhm.
personally it does, but I just hope that in a future game or DLC, we keep mentioning it. I hope that there's just throw a ganglion in somewhere, just in the random corner of some random place. Just be like, make a little thing that's clearly a ganglion, and make it say, you talk to it and it says dot dot dot. That's all I want.
Yes.
That's all I want.
Oh, that actually just made me think, and then we can go into the last two things. What is up with people thinking that Riku is the actual higher power, the actual god of the
That's a
Xenoblade
meme. That's a
universe?
meme.
I just think
That's
that he's
not
just
real. That's not real. That I think that's just like, it's
some
kind of like how
people.
it's on meme level as people saying like Shaggy is the strongest character. That Solo's versus Shaggy from Scooby Doo. People are overhyping him, and that's why we got Ultra Instinct Shaggy and Multiverses. Like,
I don't know. Like, I never really gave it any thought until I'm like, how does
oh
Riku know these
wait,
things? And then like he like smiles at Melia, but then I saw some theories that Melia might be his actual master pawn. So it could be that Riku could be a descendant of Riki,
that would make
or
sense.
or like a well, not really a descendant because again, it's supposed to start like 20 years after the end of the games.
He could
So
have been one of
probably,
his little pawn that grew up.
yeah, one of his little kids. Yeah.
Because what I think is, everyone that we see is not the city people, but everyone that we see in that are fighting, right? They are from the time where it was frozen, right? So I think Riku, I mean not Riku, I think Riku could have easily been one of Ricky's kids about 20 years after the events of Xenoblade 1, and that's what Riku is, right? Because I mean, seeing Nopon don't carry characteristics from generation to generation. I mean, they do, but I think in Tora we saw his dad. They all look the same, but mustache. But with Riki, all of them is different colors. All the Nopon in Riki's village are different colors. So I think it could be, I don't know, what if Kinu grew up and had a kid? But I think that, Riku definitely has a little bit more lore than people. I mean, you don't think about it. I see that, but he did create the Lucky Seven, which was the key to the flame clocks and everything. And I think Melia could be his master pawn, but at the end of the day, I don't want to go beyond that. I don't think. I mean, what do we can do? Connect
Yeah.
Riku to the Napon Sage from the Xenoblade 2 DLC?
I mean, no pawns are something very, very strange. They're all over the universe. They're not affected by it, but we can theorize about no pawns later on.
Oh yeah. We
But
we pretty much discussed how this game connects to other games at the beginning. We pretty much discussed that while we
yeah.
were talking about other things. But is there any
But,
other questions
so
you
yeah,
have?
to go. No. I mean, there was a few questions, but those questions like what happened with the city folk or things like that. I do have some, but like the more I think about it, I'm like, it's kind of already answered. Like not that we talked about it, I mean like in the game itself. Because again, it's like I told you, I kind of misunderstood the ending a little bit. But when I realized what the ending actually was showing, I'm like, oh, so now I'm understanding the answers to these questions, and how that would relate. So yeah, like for me, and I guess that this can kind of lead into like the last two things. Like for me, it's like I told you, I thought that like Mobius hit and then it was like, many years. Like I thought that it was first set hundreds of years after the end of the two games, right? At first. And then we see the opening cutscene, we see the worlds merging after hundreds of years, like they merge. Um, and then Mobius comes, takes control of the world, and puts everybody in that cycle after like maybe like 50 years or something like that. And it's just like 1,000 years, 2,000 years of the same cycle, and then Noah breaks it. But I thought that Noah just like pushed the worlds away so that they could just have more time to just live. And that they would hope that Origin would work. Um, and that then I was like, but why would Noah do that if the worlds are going to be merging and destroying everything all over again? Because it seemed like they weren't sure if Origin was going to work or not. But and then we got the post credit scene, and then we have like Kid Noah, and it's like exactly like 1 second before the opening cutscene of the game starts. um and like Kid Noah is just there, and like it's like nothing happened. So basically so hold on. So then he starts hearing the Ofseer flute playing, and then he goes after it instead of following Lance. So I thought that at that post-credit scene, it meant that they did, the worlds did merge together, Origin did work, and that it was like something very similar to the opening scene, but instead of that being the original Noah, this is a reincarnated Noah, like a different Noah. And now they're all in one, like both worlds are now one world. And he then hears Mio playing, like this reincarnation of Mio, and then goes look for her. That's what I thought it was. But then I realized, yeah, Origin did work, and they just got sent back in time, and all of this 2,000 plus years happened in the span of just 1 second, or like a few seconds. But it's still, I'm not too sure, and I guess this kind of leads into, I guess, my last question. What do you think happened? Do you think that, yes, Origin, like the worlds did hit each other, but then Origin reset everything so that it would go back to that one moment? And do you think that they're now just one world, and that Mio and Noah are now in that one world? Or what do you think the post-credit scene was implying?
I think the post-credit scene was implying that the worlds passed through each other and are now back at the state at which they previously were. Because
So you think that Origin did, like, that
yes,
they did hit each other?
they did.
They killed each other and reformed the way it's supposed to be, but Origin kicked in right at that particular moment. And so you do agree with my original thought that yes, but instead of a reincarnation, that it is just them again.
Yeah, I think it's them
But
again, and I don't know if Origin necessarily facilitated the worlds destroying each other or exploding, or more so, I think Origin facilitated the worlds being able to safely pass through each other. Because I think that was the main thing they were worried about, was total
no,
annihilation.
well, from my understanding, I think that the worlds were overlaid back onto each other and like reformed to be, one. But that would mean that like all of the basically it would be like a metaphysical thing with a physical creation that's happening at the same time. And because of that, like the explosion, or not necessarily explosion, but like the impact of the two energies colliding and the two worlds, literally because they're two different planes merging back together. Because again, one is based on more material, the other one's based more on ether. So the two of them just merging back together causes a like cataclysm where everything that was living died, but all like nature and stuff could have remained. And Origin, from my understanding, was basically like an external hard drive to bring all those people back to life into their bodies, basically. Because again, remember with like the life holding X, how it was just the data of that person, and they had to use a special liquid to bring the body back. But maybe in this event, it's a cataclysm that doesn't actually destroy the body, um, but just takes away like the spirit and or the consciousness, and then just resets everything. And then that's what Origin was for, was implementing everything back into the body.
Hmm. I can see
But
that, especially because that was your point with Xenoblade X, and I thought that was a good point. I just, I think that. I think we gotta wait and see what DLC happens.
yeah, we can
No,
talk about that a little later.
no,
But all
yeah.
right, so to go into the picture thing, because again that does kind of connect with that, and like the time frame of everything. So first of all, there's the picture, the ending picture, right? The one. Also, I just want to say, I really started to cry. Yes, I was crying when like during the sunset, them kissing. I'm so happy they actually kissed. I am so happy, but
Oh,
I'm so
same, same.
sad. Right, but I'm also so sad that oh, also when I was talking about overlaying, that scene where they're running towards each other, the worlds are actually like blending and overlaying all over each other. So what I was just saying actually does kind of make sense that the two worlds did probably overlay and
They did.
form into, yeah.
They
So
formed the
that's
world
what
we
I'm trying
play
to
on.
say. But anyway, hmm yeah, but I'm also really upset that Lance Senna didn't kiss and that Uni and Tyon didn't kiss because they clearly like each other as well. Um, so I don't know. I just feel like they should have kissed.
I agree.
But I'm glad that Mio and Noah kissed, and their kiss was a beautiful, beautiful kiss. But so yeah, I was already crying during that and like their speech and all of that. But then I started crying even more of like joy when Poppy just jumps
Oh,
on
yeah,
Noah.
yeah.
I almost screamed. I'm like, Poppy! And then we get to see the picture. And then I started getting even more hyped and more happy. But right, so there's the picture. But there's this one other painting that I'm not finding really other than one person talking about it online, or like two people talking about it online. And basically, in order for you to do the Ascension quest of did you get all of the heroes yet?
I got all the heroes, yes.
So you got the Segiri.
Which one is that?
That was like the last actual party member or the last hero.
The robot one?
Yes, I
Yes,
love that. I love her. She's just adorable.
she is.
Okay. So, Segiri, for you to do her Ascension quest, did you do her Ascension quest?
I did not, but if you want to tell me
So
about it, I have no
that
problems with it.
no, so it makes sense then that you do not know the painting that I'm talking about. Because in order for you to get to her Ascension quest, you have to do a specific side quest that would then later on unlock her Ascension quest. And this particular side quest, you basically have to, okay, so I think his name was number 8. Um, so he basically was in charge of disposing of things from the two worlds by Mobius. So Mobius would ask him to dispose of things. But there was one thing in particular that their Mobius, I forgot his name, he really wanted this thing disposed in particular. And then when number 8 asks him why, he's like, because this is a big threat to Mobius. You need to dispose of it now. Number 8, instead of throwing it away and disposing of it, he actually hid it and kept it secret. But it was a painting, but this painting needed to be reworked. So then you have to go on a side quest to rework the painting, and then you get the painting. And I did hear about a picture. This was one of the spoilers that I did get, but I didn't know what the picture was. I just heard that there's a picture that everyone was talking about. I didn't realize that it was, the picture, the ending picture. So I thought it was actually this picture. And at first I thought it was like the team, like the the gang from Xenoblade 1 and the gang from Xenoblade 2 together. Because remember how I told you I was looking up at a side quest and then I randomly saw like a spoiler of a picture. This was that particular picture. I thought that I saw Dunban in this picture. So and then I was so excited to do this side quest because I was looking up how to get this side quest and that's how I got that spoiler. But so I looked. So you basically have to restore this picture, and I was so excited to see the two world guys all together, all of that. But then when I actually got the picture, I was a little confused, happy, but disappointed at the same time. I was happy because turns out it wasn't Dunban. So I wasn't actually spoiled on what this picture was. And it wasn't the two parties. So I was happy about that, but I was disappointed because I have no idea who these people are and why they made a huge deal about this. Basically, and I had screenshotted it, and I'm looking at it right now. So there is 7 people, for sure. There is. I'm looking at it right now. And after now beating the game, I'm thinking like maybe this is Shulk's kids or Rex's kids. But then the more I'm looking at it, I'm like, Rex had 3 kids. One of them had blonde hair, one of them had pink or reddish hair, and then the other one had white hair. We'll get about that in a minute. But look at this picture. There's 2 girls that have white hair, one dude that has red hair, but it's not red like Pyra's, it's red like ginger red, like Ryan's hair color. And then one is dirty blonde, and then the other 3 are just dark brown haired. And I'm thinking like if it is one of their kids, it doesn't make sense because Nia's kid, who we assume is Mio has Gramati ears. None of these people have Gramati ears. We would assume one of them would be Melia's kids, but none of them are High Entia. This is literally like a painting from like, I don't know, like the Renaissance era kind of thing. I have no idea who these people are. And then
Can
I kept
you send me
thinking
the
like,
screenshot?
here, yeah, actually, I can definitely do that right now.
Okay.
And I'm thinking like maybe these are the founders. But then I remembered one of the founders is a Gramati, right? So it doesn't really make sense. So I'm so confused on who these people are. And like why they made it such a huge deal. Because this seems like it's intentional. I just sent it to you now on Instagram. It seems like it is a huge deal. I have no idea who these people are.
What the hell?
Yeah, like I have no idea who these people are.
What am I looking at?
And like the name of the painting, they're like, oh, it looks like they're all a family. Let's call it a sibling or a sibling portrait. Like that's the name of it, this sibling's portrait. But who are these people?
You want to know who these people are? That kid in the back is Kid Zanza, and the girl in the front, that's Kid Mayneth. They were childhood friends, and they grew up and they loved each other. No, I'm kidding. But
like I can kind of see one of them being like the one I thought was Dunban is the one right in the middle with long hair and like a cloak. But then when I saw, I'm like, that's not Dunban. That looks like a girl. And then like, the more I think about it, like the only one that this could actually be the kids of is Ryan and Charlotte, the redhead dude, and then Shulk and Fiora, which is the dirty blonde haired dude, and then maybe Dunban. That explains 3 of them, but what about the other 4?
maybe Ryan and Charlotte had 2 kids, so that girl on the left is Charlotte's kid, and the guy on the right is Ryan. Right? Oh, they had 2 kids. Got the kid on the right and a girl on the left.
It could be, but then like, who are the 2 white-haired dudes? And then the chubby dude that kind of looks like Rex, but we definitely know it's not Rex because Rex does not have any brown-haired kids.
This definitely means something. I don't know
It
what it
does. They
means.
made a huge deal about it. There's no way it does not mean anything. Like you said, Monolith Soft does not do little things unintentionally. This definitely has to mean something. And I do think we might find out a little bit more about it in the DLC. But again, that's the DLC conversation. So it's either these are some of their kids, or these are um what's it called? The original founders. Because there is 7 of them. There are theories that Melia or Nia was the 7th founder, that they just decided not to let themselves be known, that one of the queens was involved in the founders. So that is a theory, but I don't know.
Wow. Okay. For anyone wondering about this picture, I'll tweet it out. Follow me on Twitter. I need more Twitter followers. But with that being said,
I guess the last thing left is talking about the picture and the last points with that.
so I love all you guys.
I'm happy we got to see them.
Okay. So
Yep. Love you, Rex. We
wow.
love you too. And all you guys.
Wow.
Well,
So
so first of all,
Blades can have kids.
I'm glad that, you know, Rex is very happy. I'm glad that we got a lot of confirmation with that one picture alone that Blades and humans can definitely have kids. Well, actually, now it's a little bit trickier, because if Pyra and Mithra were made 2 separate people, and my theory would be correct that they are no longer Blades but human but still have access to their weapons, then that would mean that they are humans more than Blades. Or if they are fully Blades, then it would mean that yes, Blades and humans can have kids. In terms of Nia, which we'll get to in a minute, she's a flesh eater. So she does have human DNA, so maybe that's why she can have kids. But I don't know. Either way, it is proven that technically it is somewhat possible for Blades and humans to have kids.
Yeah.
But that now still just goes into the actual conversation regarding it.
So it makes well, Rex being with Pyra and Mithra makes 100% sense. Just because it wouldn't, because you get to choose whether or not, you know, he has more affinity for Pyra and Mithra, kind of technically, whatever you want to interpret the ending of 2. But I'd say the main surprise is the fact that he went with Nia too. That caught me off guard more so than anything.
Well, so here's the thing with that, right? I'm looking at the picture right now. When we first see that picture, I was like, it's them, and I was like so happy, and I'm looking at all of them, and like I was just so happy, and I saw all of them. I'm like, Rex looks good, you know, Zeke looks regal, Pandoria looks super happy. It's so nice to see them much older. They're like probably in their 30s right now. So they're still very, very young. I mean, Rex was the youngest one out of all of them, but still, like, it's just nice, you know, to see them all happy. And but the biggest thing I was focusing on was, you know, Pyra, Mithra, and how they're 2 individuals. Because again, one of the biggest things that was left open-ended was like, if they are 2 individuals, if they do remember Rex, or if they do remember Rex and they're just gonna merge back into one person, right? So it's nice that we got another confirmation, other than Blaze and humans can have kids, is that Pyra and Mithra do remember Rex, and they did become 2 separate individuals. And again, it makes sense that Rex, I guess, would go and marry both of them, considering they are technically one person, and he always saw them as just one person, just 2 different sides of that one person, right? But then, you know, like, I kept seeing everything. I saw Nia, and I saw Drama, but I didn't realize, and I saw like Tyra and Mithra having babies on their hands, and I got like so happy. And I'm like, hold on, yo, I'm sorry, I'm looking at the picture right now. Tyra's kid, his hair, it's not as red as hers. It's actually more of a ginger red. So I do think that picture could be their kids.
Hold on, let me look at it again.
And I'm actually looking at Mia's kid. I don't see Gomardi ears on Mia's kid. I'm so confused. But anyway, so yeah, like I did not realize. So I was like so focused on Rex, like with
pause,
Iron Method.
pause. I forgot to mention this. I don't mean to cut you off.
Mm.
Nia's outfit
Mm-hmm.
is a mixture of her and Mithra's. Anyway, go ahead. Her casual outfit.
How? Like
It's
the
a
one
mix.
in the picture?
Oh no, not the one in the picture. I'm talking about if you go to the one in the game, Nia, when as a hero, if you look at her model, it's clearly a mixture of her blade form, her normal form, and Mithra.
Is it?
Because look at the gloves and the shoes, of like look.
Well, yeah, no, I can definitely see the blade form and the casual and like her hidden form, but where are you getting the Mithra from?
I'll pull up a picture of Nia from Xenoblade 3. Her blade.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking at
But
right
I'm
now.
talking
Like,
about her
I definitely
casual
get
outfit, her hero outfit.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking at right now.
Yeah, look.
Like, where do you?
Look at the shoes that she has. Look at the sort of like the angular parts of armor that she has. That looks like Mithra stuff.
I guess that makes
Okay.
sense.
Anyway, that doesn't really matter. But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah. So as I was saying, so I never really realized um the whole. So I'm looking at this drawing of Hironia, but I guess I can kind of see what you're talking about with like the shoulder pads, or not shoulder pads, but you know what I mean, the pointy stuff. That makes sense. But right. So I did not realize what Nia was holding. I only saw Nia. I did not see anything on her hand. So I I was so focused on Pyramithra being physical, and two separate beings, and that they also had babies with Rex. So I was super happy about that. But then I saw so many people like talking about like, oh yeah, Rex really, really got lucky, like I'm glad Nia found her happiness with him, and I'm like, what? And then I look at the back at the picture and I'm like, no way. What? And I just kept staring at it and I'm like, so Rex married all three of them?
Yeah, no, I was staring at that for 20 minutes at the end, and I was just like, bro, did not see that coming from Nintendo.
No, I didn't either. And again, like, I mean, I know that this is something that a lot of people in this generation are being more open to understanding, but I'm just surprised that Nintendo allowed this. And that's one thing that I really wanted to talk about, is like all the Xeno games touch on so many taboo stuff, and it's really, really cool, like going against a church, or like cannibalism, a lot of different things. They touch on so many taboo elements, and another big taboo element is in Xenoblade 3, and I kept telling you this as I was playing it. Like Gray, he's 60 years old, right? Gray's wife is 30. So that's, I mean, like an age difference thing, people are really used to it. It's not very taboo, but like she's still super young and he's 60, I mean, he's not old, but that's a 30-year difference. And I grew up like with my family, like my parents, they're 10 years apart. So again, I'm used to things like this, but I was just still surprised that Nintendo allowed, because I know a lot of people are completely against like such a huge age gap, you know? Um, so was surprised that Nintendo allowed that to happen, where it's like they're 30 years apart and they do love each other. They are a married couple, you know, and I'm like, I'm glad that they touched on this, you know, because it's a real thing and it's something that's like part of my life. Like I said, my mom and my stepfather, they're 10 years apart. And it's just something that, you know, like that happens, you know. And it kind of shows you can't always really control love. And I guess like for Rex and Pyra's case, they also touched on that a little bit because Pyra was definitely like 20 something and Rex is supposed to be 15. Um, so it kind of does show, even though like Pyra was almost 10 years older than Rex, they ended up being together, you know? Um, Literally, now it's canon that they ended up being together and they had a family, a big family.
And my
Another,
interpretation, I interpret Rex as 18 years old. But I get the legitimate. But I think the thing about that
yeah,
is, though,
I never saw Rex. Uh, no, sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say that I think that if this was properly localized in English, Rex would have been 18. But I think it's just because, you know, in certain I'm not trying to stereotype or anything, but look at something like anime. Like, for example, you will see high schoolers in anime wear particular outfits. Like, for example, the thing that comes to my head the most is like My Hero, My Hero Academia. But I think that I agree with the whole taboo topics and everything, touching on that. But yeah, you know what? Yeah. It's cool that they're touching on it. And you know what? I think that, like, and I think the way that they do it, though, it's not like, see, a lot of reasons why things are taboo in our society is because of the way our society is built. Yet when you take away how our society is built, like, inherently, right now, if someone who was 20 wanted to get with a kid, it's like, no.
Who's like five? Let's say like a kid that's 20 years old wants to get with a 15-year-old. You know, like let's put a 5 age gap. Like, yes, it is taboo by modern standards, but back then and in many cultures still, it's normal. You know, like I mean normal as in like because it's only 5 years, they're close enough. If it was like a 30-year-old trying to get with a 15-year-old, then that's a lot different, you know. But the more you think about it, like the older you get, the age difference definitely, like, even though it could be like 30 years difference, such as Gray and his wife in Xenoblade X, 30 years is a long time, but because you're so much older, it's almost like it doesn't really exist at that point, you know. But like if you're a 30-year-old trying to be with a 15-year-old, then that's a little, you know, wrong, you know.
Yeah.
So
no,
like it all
I
really
agree.
depends. Like I personally think like a 5 year gap between 20-year-old to like 15-year-old isn't hugely a big deal, just because I personally think that like 15-year-olds are pretty mature. You know, I'm basically have the same mindset when I was 15. You know, I'm turning 26 now. You know, like it's not a huge difference. But it's also because the culture that I come from, like in Brazil, it's normal for like a 20-year-old to be dating a 15-year-old. The parents might say something about it. They might not really like it, but it's not completely frowned upon.
Yeah,
you know?
it ultimately boils down to culture. And the thing about American
Maturity.
culture is, the unfortunate thing is, a lot of American culture is immature and toxic and dangerous to an extent, because obviously the main reason why the whole thing about underage whatnot is you got kids and you got people wanting to manipulate kids and whatnot. But you see, in certain cultures, the age in which kids have to mature is a lot younger, and that's why. And I'm putting this out there: I do not support. I don't. Just disclaimer: I don't support underage dating or whatnot.
We are all making.
This is just
we're all trying to make that very clear.
This is a pure, just philosophical, just sociological conversation, which and you got to look back in time when people lived a lot less, so people were getting married at like 14, 15. And so
Mm-hmm.
ultimately, whether or not something is accepted as right or wrong comes down to society and, you know, the context of the situation, you know. Um
Right.
because I think Rex is a teenager. Pyra is well, technically Pyra's hundreds of years old, but you
Yeah.
know, it's
I
one of
always
those
saw
things where it's
Pyra.
I think there's a difference between actual age and then mental age. You know.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. And that's the thing too. Like, yes, like for example in Brazil, it's normal to have like a 16, 17-year-old dating a 23, 24, 25, 26-year-old, right? But it all comes down to how mature the two are and the parents accepting it, you know? Um, and it's not just the parents too, it's like it is a little bit normal. Again, it is someone over 18 dating someone under 18. Again, we're not trying to say that people should do that. We're just trying to explain that the world is more complicated than that. Like it's not like, we're not trying to endorse
Yeah, you can't
pedophiles or
apply
anything like
your
that.
own
Yeah,
culture to the rest of the world and expect it to make sense.
exactly. Like some things is definitely true. Like you should not be a 20-year-old trying to kiss and do stuff with a 5-year-old. That is insanely messed up. That's not what we're saying. We're talking about people who are already mature and old enough and much, much older and different viewpoints across different countries. Like the world is much more complicated than what is just presented in the US, right? So that's what we're basically trying to say. Like I'm trying to make that very, very clear because some people will take things, even if we try to make it clear, completely out of context.
No, yeah, literally, I agree, and um, yeah, but I just think it's like you don't have to agree, and I'm not even saying I inherently agree with
Right.
anything personally. I think you there should be
Yeah,
when you're under
we're
18, there
just
should only
saying that
be
like
yeah, exactly.
yeah, like if you're under 18 and trying to be with someone who is like 5 to maybe 9 years older, but as long as like you're like 15, 16, 17, something like that, and that person is in their 20s, it's a little bit more passable than if that person is like 40 or 50, you know?
Yeah,
Just because those two are a lot
I see
closer
that.
in age. And like the more like for example, if you're like I've heard of some people in America say like, "Oh, you're 17 but you're dating someone who's 21. What is wrong with you? That is messed up. That is wrong." I'm like, "Dude, that's a 4-year difference. Like that's not a huge deal. This person's about to be basically is mature enough too. Like I don't really understand that concept of like if you guys are like 4 or 5 years, why is that still such a huge deal? For some things, yes, like you should definitely not be doing anything extremely like sexual or anything like that. I think that you guys need to wait on that a little bit more, just because then the laws and everything else. But like if your parents approve of it, like you dating this person, then why is that such a giant issue if you're like 17, the dude's 21, you know? Like in my case, for example, not romantic case, just a friend case. Um, in high school, I was 3 years older than one of my best friends, and her parents just like was freaking out. It's like, he's 18, 19, like why are you like being friends with them? And then like they met me and they just straight out all fell in love with me. Like every time I go hang out with them, like her parents would just like come and hug me like so much. It's like we were like so wrong. We are so sorry for like how we treated you. And I'm like, yeah, it's fine. Like for example, even like ages in Brazil too. Friends, like you have groups of friends where like you could be a 13-year-old in a group of friends with someone who's like 28, and like you'll be like best friends, hang out, support each other, and literally just friendship, nothing more. But here in the US, that's completely frowned upon. And I'm like, what is the issue if these guys are just friends, even though they're like 9 years apart, you know?
Yeah, and I think it's just because
So like,
the reason why it's so the reason why the laws are strict, and in the US why there is not that leeway, is because just there's way too many. The unfortunate part is that there's way too many toxic people out there. There's way too many
Mhm.
people that prey on vulnerable people, you know,
Exactly.
and
Again,
that's
that's
ultimately
why
where
it
problems
always
stem from, uh,
right.
because the other cultures created their own customs because of their own societies and how that happened. We don't have to agree.
Hmm.
It can be morally wrong to us. We don't. It's gonna
Right.
be wrong. We can disagree. Like I don't agree at
Exactly.
all with particularly a 20-year-old and anyone under the age of like 18. I don't agree with that.
Hmm.
And the thing is, though, when you look at other cultures that accept it, it's not just, you can't just apply your own lens and be like, I don't accept it, so that is why it's wrong. You know, it can be wrong. We
Right.
can both agree that something's wrong.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, you
And,
have to look
and
at it
that's the thing
from the
too. That,
cultural
like,
perspective. You have to, like,
right.
because no one, I don't think anyone's going to disagree with something being wrong. Like, for example, if there's clearly some guy
Hmm.
that's creepy, if there's clearly, because there are people with bad intents, right? And people will
Exactly.
try to manipulate, and people will try to take advantage,
Hmm.
and that is unfortunate. But I'm
Right.
just thinking, circling back to Xenoblade, the reason why I think there could be that age gap between Pyra being in her 20s, Rex being a teenager, is very circumstantial. It's very circumstantial.
Hmm.
It's very circumstantial. Um, and this game comes from Japanese culture, which I'm not
Right.
stereotyping, but the age of consent in Japan is lower than it is, and I believe it's like 14
Hmm.
in Japan. I'm not 100%, but I know that
Right.
age is lower, and that is, it comes out
Hmm.
of our culture. And now if you try to look at it from a lens from me being from the US, I think that's a little weird and creepy, having someone
Right.
that you know, I think that's weird and creepy. I wouldn't agree with that, but it's just
Hmm.
the thing of the whole point. The whole point of this little tangent is to just don't agree with something. You can think something's morally wrong,
Exactly.
but you gotta look at the cultural context to understand it.
Hmm. Like, and it's like you even said, like, if you should not be, you should really, and I agree, like, it's fine if you're like 20, 22, and the person that you like is like 15, 16. It's fine. You can't control who you fall for. But what you can control is the things that you do, right? So
I don't
it's
inherently
fine.
agree that someone who's 20 years old should date a 15-year-old, but
No.
truly I understand.
That's not. No, that's not what I'm saying. So
No,
hold on.
I agree.
What I'm saying is that like you can't help for who you follow. If you fall for someone who's like 15 and you're 20, well, that's who you fell for. But that person's still really underage, and you guys should not really be more than friends, right?
Exactly.
And
Absolutely
and
not.
that's
Yeah.
what that's where I'm trying to circle it into Xenoblade. Um, like, yeah. So that person could be 20, you could be 15. You guys should not be dating. You guys should just be friends. Wait, that person should wait until you are 18, at least, at the minimum 18, to then try to start something with you, right? Because I think that that would be a little bit more correct. Because, like, you guys would be friends, and then you guys, when that person becomes an official adult, then you guys can decide legally and better, like, in a more natural way what to do, right? But it's like you said, and I think that that's kind of what could have happened with Pyra and Rex as well, is, they were best friends. They clearly liked each other, but they never did anything on screen. They never even kissed. Whereas opposed to Noah and Mio, who are just a year apart, you see them kissing, right? So we don't see that Rex and Pyra actually become an actual couple until Xenoblade 3, where they get married, right? So that's what I'm trying to say. Like, in terms of like Pyra and Rex, I think they did wait until Rex was 18. 'Cause I always saw Rex as 18. I was shocked when the producers said that he's 15, and I'm like, Pyra is very clearly not 18. Or a teenager. I am sorry, but that's what I'm just trying to get. You know, what I'm trying to say. I also think that people should be at least 18 if they're trying to date someone much older. Um, but you know, like,
Yeah.
yeah,
And I
yeah,
just think,
that's what I'm trying
yeah,
to say.
and then the whole thing, people may think, oh, 18, a 20-year-old seeing someone's 15, grooming them and whatnot. Of course, that's
No,
not
like
okay.
that's
Uh,
no, yeah, that's not. But that's not what I'm trying to
but
say.
no,
It's
no, no,
like
I agree.
at least you like each other, but like you should know, like, yeah, it's fine. Like you two can have a conversation and like admit to each other you like each other, but like understand this one is underage, and you two need to be mature enough and just say like, look, we like each other, but we really can't be together right now because you're underage. So let's just stay friends. Let's not do anything. If you turn 18, if we still like each other, then we'll try it. You know?
true,
I think
but
that
I
like
mean,
that is more.
but the thing, the weird part about it is that like you would have to go. The reason why I would swing back to culture is that like in America, there isn't really a whole lot of ways someone who is 20 or older would interact with someone who's a teenager. Whereas in other cultures and in other countries,
That's true.
seeing a 15-year-old interact with a 20-year-old is a lot more common, which is why
Right.
dating requirements and ages are varied in different cultures because it's in terms of that interaction, right? And so given Rex and Pyra were had that moment, they were able to go through the entirety of Xenoblade 2 together, right? And fall in love with each other, right? And that circumstance, you know what? We're getting out of this conversation of society. It's getting too complicated.
But okay, the last thing I just wanted to say is an example of what me and you were just talking about is like it's fine if the two like each other, but one of them is underage, but then waiting, you know, until that one is of age, you know, then that's a little bit more acceptable. Is like I just saw the movie Elvis, and I didn't really know anything about Elvis. Turns out though that he was like 20 something, like he was in his 20s. He's like almost 10 years older than his wife. And she was like 14 or 15. They met, but he waited until she turned 21 until he asked her to marry him. So that's what that kind of ties into what I'm saying, like a big example of like this type of stuff does happen. And a lot of cultures and countries do accept it, and for them it's normal. But for the US, it is completely taboo, right?
True.
So yeah, so that's just what I'm trying to say. Is like these different cultures, and that's why people need to look into this and say like these things are real, you know, and we should try to understand the culture. We might not fully agree with it. You know, we might agree with some of it, given some context, but not everything. You know, that's what people need to do. And I think that Nintendo allowing this with Rex and Pyra, with Gray and his wife, to pass through, I think it's a great thing because it does show a side of the world that is real, you know, and
Yeah,
it's not
talking
one
about
that
it
is
rather than just avoiding it because it's taboo
yeah,
and
and it's
uncomfortable to talk about.
exactly, and it's not trying to like cause and it's not trying to show it as a harmful way, right? It's trying to show it as a natural part of life that does happen with a lot of people, right? So that's what I'm trying to get with. So I'm glad that they showed that with Gray and his wife being 30 years apart, and with Rex and Power being about 10 years apart. At least they look like they're about 10 years apart. But the other big taboo thing that I want to talk about, and then this one is one I like. I'm not sure. Like I can at least understand some of the like the age difference thing, but this one I personally don't really understand, and I have no idea. And it is something that does happen a lot, and it's one I told you about. So Monica, do you remember this
Oh
particular
my god,
conversation?
that situation That
That
is
I think
just
is a little bit more messed up in some
no,
ways.
yeah, no. Wait, so it
No.
was the brother of her deceased husband
Yep.
that
So,
wanted to
so
get with her.
right. So Monica, for you guys, she is 30, right? She's young. She's very young. She had a husband. Okay, so first, and then that leads into another conversation, not just that, too. Teen pregnancy. Because Monica is 30, but Gondor is 18. So that means that Monica and her husband had Gondor when Monica was like, what, 16, 17, something like that? So Monica was a teen mom. And that's another big taboo topic, that happens a lot all over the world. And for all of you guys like trying to figure out where are we getting these ages from, it comes from the affinity charts in the game. It shows like the ages of the characters. So, like that's another thing. So we have already um big age differences in a romantic relationship. We got teen pregnancy. And then we got the big one, which is so Monica is 30. Um, Her husband died 14 years before, so when Gondor, her daughter, was 4. And basically, her husband has a younger brother who is about 22, I think, or 21, something like that. He's in his 20s. And basically there's this big side quest, and it's Monica's like ascension quest basically, and it turns out that her brother-in-law tells her that he loves her and he wants to protect her. And at first I was like, oh, it's family, like family telling each other that you love each other. It's nice that he's just saying like look, you're my family, I love you, I'm trying to protect you, that's what I was thinking at first. And then the more he kept talking, and when Monica realized what he was saying was when I realized what he was saying. So my reaction was the exact same as Monica's reaction at the exact same time. He was straight out confessing his love, like romantic love, to his sister-in-law, who is 10 years older than him, which again is another age gap thing, and how he has always loved her since he was a little kid. And how he straight out asks her to be with him. And I was just like, dude, this is your sister-in-law.
That yeah.
And you're asking her to be your girlfriend and then your wife. And I was just like, what? So now we have incest, basically. So, yeah, dude, that one shocked me so much more. Hello?
Sorry about that, but no, that is just that is that is wrong for a variety of reasons. You don't.
Right.
That means you were not only were you younger looking at someone older, you were also looking at your brother's
wife.
No, that absolutely not.
And you ask her to be with you. And the worst part is she actually thinks about this.
I mean, to be fair, Monica has gone through a lot of emotional things.
Okay, yeah.
Her daughter's always calling her bitch. Her daughter's always calling her a bitch. Her dad dies, and now she has to magically befriend 6 random kids. I think Monica she's trying to process a lot. And
yeah, and I mean that's what even Uni comes up to her at the end of like that whole revelation, and I found it hilarious that her brother-in-law is like, what about when all of this is over? And then she's like, what about when it's all over? And he's like, well, when it's all over, you're not gonna be my commander anymore. There's not gonna be any ranks. You're just gonna be you're just gonna be you, and I'm just gonna be me. So what about after all this is over? Will be with me? And I'm just like, dude, you're actually asking her to think about this. This is your sister-in-law, dude. Um, but and then she actually froze, and she did think like, oh, when this is all over, maybe I can find somebody. But he kept saying like, what about me? Just be with me. And then as soon as he leaves, his friends, the other Ouroboros candidates, they're like, dude, we can't believe you just did that. Like they're cheering him on. And I'm like, you guys are cheering this dude on for trying to basically date his sister. Like,
No,
okay.
yeah, that's no. I'd say
Like, I
teen.
get that they're happy that like he confessed his love, but like, guys, this is his sister, basically.
Yeah,
No,
no, that's not all right.
no.
But I think
But
in
what I'm
terms of
trying to
like,
say is after that, yeah, sorry. Uni asked her, like, he has a point. After this, you've been through so much, you have a chance of being happy. So Uni did just make the point that you made, and that is what made Monica think about it. But she doesn't give an answer. If you walk up to her after that side quest, Lance, I think, goes like, "Hey, so about your brother-in-law, have you given it any more thoughts?" And Monica's like, "Well, well, we'll just wait and see." That's literally her answer. So she
yeah,
is thinking about it. But I'm sorry, go ahead. You were saying?
I just think it's because Monica's like emotionally scarred. Technically, Monica doesn't even exist at the end of this game, but
Well, yeah, that's true.
but I personally also think it's well, my inside thinks it's messed up of the dude because I think it's he taking advantage of her when she's in an emotional state because if she was thinking sanely
Mm-hmm.
she would have said no, but because of the emotional state she's in, I think Monica is pretty vulnerable. So I think that's
Right.
why she's even considering it, you know? So I think that's the messed up
Yeah,
part.
but she should still put into mind that. Yeah, but she should still put into mind that that's like her brother.
Yeah, and her.
I know that this also does happen. And again, it's huh?
No, go ahead.
No, and I'm saying I know that this does happen, and um, okay, a little messed up story. Um, my uncle, he's dating this lady, and then this who's not my aunt. I mean, I guess she is in a way, but she's not the aunt that I grew up with, right? They only started dating recently, and she has a daughter who's much older. She's like 30. She's like 32. But then suddenly, everyone in my family started saying like, "Oh, you should be dating Lion," and I'm like, "What?" I'm like, "No." No, that's my step cousin, isn't it? And then I brought that up to my mom, and then my mom is like, "You guys aren't related by blood. Like there's nothing wrong there." And I'm like, "Mom, this is the daughter of the lady that's dating my uncle. So that makes her family, doesn't it?" And she's like, "Well, yes, but you're not related by blood." I'm like, "Yeah, Mom, still family." So that's basically the same situation. I know that this type of thing does happen in real life where you know, siblings-in-law end up getting each other after like the one died, right? Or the one breaks up or whatever. It happens. And I guess it's not really seen so much as taboo because like my mom says, it's not really blood. But in my mind, it's like maybe some exceptions can be made, but like for the most part, this is your brother or your cousin, like even if you're not related by blood, this is someone in your family. So that's where I'm like, that's kind of messed up because this is her little brother, technically.
Yeah. No, I
But
agree. Uh, yeah, that's pretty. Yeah, nah. When you were telling me about that side quest, I
like,
was just like, bro.
yeah, even I was shocked. I'm like, why? But again, different cultures, different situations, different viewpoints.
Exactly.
Uh,
And going off of the
like for
cultures. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, like, for me, yes, there might be some exceptions, like if it is like a step family, but not like step siblings at all. like maybe step cousins or something like that, I can at least let slide by a little bit depending on the situation. But like brothers, like siblings-in-laws and step siblings, no, definitely no. You should not be doing that.
No, yeah. But when it comes back to culture, you got to keep in mind teen pregnancy. What teen pregnancy? Think about it. This is happening in a war-torn world. A lot of
Right.
times, I think things correlate to
Exactly.
life expectancy. So Monica, even though people are living for 60 years, that's not a guarantee because she could die any day. Specifically because she's a freaking commander. So
Exactly.
she could die at any point. So she wanted kids, she gotta have them as soon as possible. I mean, the interesting thing to see is she's a single mother, but not because the dad left, because the dad died. Which
Get that
more
down.
often, I
Exactly.
mean, I think this game presents a lot of things that may be rare or we may not think about, but they happen. Because, you know, a lot of times you
Exactly.
think if a parent dies, it's more likely than not, you think, okay, the mother's dead. Rarely do you think it's the father. It well, it depends on the situation, but I think a lot of
Right.
times if you think, especially given where women actually have to birth the child, you know,
Mm-hmm.
seeing Monica have to have teen pregnancy isn't surprising to me inherently.
It's not. It's not. It's because it's like you said, like they're in a war-filled world and they don't know how long they actually have a chance. I mean, if you're part of the Lost Numbers, which Monica was, and we can assume that she joined the Lost Numbers pretty early on, right? Because it seems to be that they tend to join the Lost Numbers when they're in their early teens, from the information we got. So it makes sense that Monica would try to, become start a life pretty early, but then she had to become the commander and all that. So it does make sense, like you said. But like in our viewpoint of society, especially as society in America and in most countries and the situation in most countries, it would be really messed up that it's a teen mom, you know? But in the
Exactly.
situation that is presented, it makes sense. And again, it's that thing that we keep saying, you have to look at the context behind it and the culture that is around them. For this, it makes perfect sense why she would be a teen mom.
Exactly. So,
But then, there's a bunch of other big taboo topics across all the Xeno games, across Xenoblade, even all of Xenoblade 1 and 2, even like cannibalism, racism, all these things. There's a lot of big taboo topics. But one that has not actually been present in any Xeno game, from what I could tell, because again, I've played all of them, is the situation with Rex, Pyra, Mithra, and I guess Nia. And I
that
guess
is
that's the last
just
thing. That's the last thing we gotta talk about,
and
I guess,
I
is
gotta see it. I gotta see the interactions. I gotta see how that happened because I just
like, 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 I mean, okay, you said that when Rex tells Nia he loves her, he was still being oblivious and he meant it as a loving, friendly way, like not a romantic way, right?
yes.
Right. So I think so too, but and then I even asked you, like, do you think that he was actually serious when he said he loves her and that he didn't mean it as a friendly way and that he was also serious when he said I love you and all you other guys? So do you think that he was saying he loves, like
No,
romantically loves
absolutely
everybody in the
not.
party? Yeah, and you said no, right?
Yeah,
So you don't think that they're all in one big romantic relationship, like all
absolutely not.
like
No.
so yeah, again, you
Cause
agree that it's just
do you
Rex
would you
and
legitimately think they got feelings for Dro Mark?
I don't know, man. I mean,
No,
Ramonk is right there.
I just no. But I think But I think Rex, he's young, so I think that scene is meant to paint his ignorance. I think we should still take that scene as it was meant, because
Right,
Rex is young. He's still learning, right? And he wasn't. I
right.
don't think Rex even hits the point of maturity till after the game ends, to be honest, because you have the
Exactly.
whole
I mean,
thing where
he was always open-minded, always really mature. He did know what it is that he always wanted, but he was also very laid back and shrugged some stuff off for sure.
Agreed. Agreed.
But then that leads into that topic where it's like, um, so he got with Power and Mythica. Again, that's a little bit more understandable because they are technically supposed to be one person, but then they became two separate individuals. So it makes sense, you know. And again, it touches on to the subject that this type of thing does happen in real life, where some people have more than one wife, some people have more than one husband, some people cheat and they have two different people, you know. Uh, Again, it all comes down to the cultural understanding and the situation itself. For me, personally think it's one, like, just two, like, one and one, you know? Uh, but I definitely understand that some people have multiple partners, you know? But for me, it's just
Yeah,
you and your one partner.
and
Like,
it
for me,
comes
like,
down to the culture again, like you were saying.
yeah. And again, like if I meet someone who has more than one partner, I will respect that. You know, I'm not saying, you know, I'm just saying that for me, like me, I would want to be with just one person, right? That's what I'm saying. And again, if I come across someone who has multiple partners and they're all for like they all respect each other and they're all in it together, I respect that because that's them. That's their life, you know. We have to respect people even if we don't always fully agree with the situation, right? Um, Again, you have to be open-minded, you have to be respectful, you know. Some things is extremely wrong. Like I said earlier, 30-year-old should not be trying to kiss a 5-year-old like in a sexual way or do anything like that. That is wrong. You should not do that. That's messed up, right? But now somebody having multiple partners and they all are aware of each other, that's what they choose. You know, they're all mature, they all decide. I just think that for me, and again, I'm just trying to be very clear and open because again, people will take anything out of context. I respect it, I accept it, but for me, in my personal life, me, who I am, I would want to be just with one person. Like that's me, you know,
Same
but
here.
I have nothing against those people who have multiple partners. I'm happy for them. If they're happy, I'm happy for them, you know? And that's what came in with Rex, and I'm happy that he got very, very happy, you know, but I'm just trying to process how Nia got involved in this, you know, and then I'm trying to think
And
like
then you think
what
of the
kind of
new
a
game plus
polyamorous
scene.
relationship.
The
No,
new
I don't
game
think that's
plus
gonna be.
scene, you know, in the not new game plus scene, but I'm saying like you know in Xenoblade 2 when you beat new game plus, you know
Uh-huh.
the ending is just
Oh,
yeah,
yeah, you have the three of them holding hands, or the four of them holding hands.
yeah. I didn't think that meant anything, but now
That's
it's like
true. I mean, I did see a lot of people pointing that out that like, oh, it means that he accepted Nia as one too. And I'm like, no, I think it just means that he respects her. Nope, nope. It definitely means he opened up to Nia.
no, yeah, that's exactly what that means.
So again, I can
Um,
understand how he got to Pyra and Mithra. I'm just trying to figure out how Nia got involved in
I
this.
really got it. Yeah, I got to
Because
see
like
that.
because then I'm trying to figure out like what kind of polyamorous relationship are they in? Are they all in a relationship with each other, like the four of them together,
Because
or
then
is
technically
Rex?
Pyra and Mythra are sisters.
Technically, they count each other as sisters, even though they were originally one being that split in that became two beings in one body, and then they become two separate ones. So yes, technically now they're sisters. Which then makes it even more confusing and more a little bit more messed up because
So
if they're
then
in a relationship together, then that is straight out.
So that means
But
uncle.
then
So that means Rex would be the dad and the uncle.
basically, if they consider each other sisters, but at the same time, Rex only always sees them as one person. He's made that very clear. So I don't think he sees it like that. Even though Power and Mythra might see each other as sisters, I think they do understand that they are originally one being. So for Power Mythra, it's a little confusing. But anyway, what do you think? Do you think that it's Rex, that all of them are in a relationship with each other, and that like Nia is in a relationship with Power and Mithra is in a relationship with each other, and then all of them are in a relationship with
You
Rex, or
know,
do you think it's just Rex?
I see it as you know when certain cultures where kings or people of royalty have multiple
Mm-hmm.
wives, it's the
Right,
king having
exactly.
multiple wives, not the wives having wives with each other. So I think
and with
it's
the husband. Yeah, so you
yeah,
do think that it's more of the traditional, like you said,
agreed,
ancient multiple wife, where it's one for the one guy, basically.
agreed. Yeah, that's what I
And
think
like the
basically.
two and then like the wives would like treat each other as, I don't want to say the word sisters, but like family
Girlfriends.
as well.
I mean,
No, not even
not
friends. I
girlfriends,
would,
but I mean like,
yeah.
you know when girls call their friends girlfriends.
No. I wouldn't even say friends. I would say like family, like because they are family
Oh no,
technically.
yeah, agree. I mean,
So
yeah,
like so you do think it's more like that as
I
well.
do, I do. I just think
Mm.
it's hard for me to understand that because I didn't grow up in that culture where that's normal.
Exactly,
So
and I haven't really either.
it's
So
hard for me to think how that dynamic works. But
yeah, and like how, because I've even heard like in history, like there's a lot of jealousy between, the different wives against like the one husband. Um, and so like was there jealousy between the three of them? I don't think so, because they've been friends. So I think they kind of just understand it. But it's like you said, because this is not one of the topics that it has been around in our lives. Uh, like, how do they decide who gets to sleep? Do they all sleep in the same bed? Do they all have different rooms? Does is Rex closer to one? Like, there's so many questions that is left open now about their actual relationship, which I'm just curious about. I'm not trying to judge it
and
or
the
anything. I'm
craziest
just
thing
curious, like,
is it
mhm.
seems to somehow work because you would think trying to think this works damn near almost give me a headache. Trying to figure out how that would work, especially because Mithra. I don't know. Did Mithra have a complete personality change? But Nia
Yeah.
is happy at the end.
Yes, and that's the important thing is Nia is happy. She
So that
clearly
means
had a happy life. That's good.
whatever this is, it works out somehow. I don't know.
And not only is Nia happy, but she's a lot more laid back, a lot more free, even than how she was at the end of Xenoblade 2. So you can tell she became so happy. So it's easy to see that they made it work. So I'm happy for them.
I agree. I agree. So
But like, yeah, so it's just, again, I ask all these questions because it is something that we don't really know. It's something that for me and you, it is something we've heard about, but it's not something that's been present in our lives for us to fully understand how that dynamic between that type of relationship really works.
I agree.
So, but they made it work, and I'm happy for them. So, but now, do you think that Nia is Mio's mom and that Rex is Mio's dad?
No comment.
Wait, does more information get revealed in Nia's side quest?
No comment.
Because I'm looking at the picture. I
I
do not see Gormati ears.
I want
Huh?
to say and explain, but I cannot because you got to beat the side quest, and then
So hold on. So just tell me this then, yes or no? They do address Nia's kid. Not if it's me or not. They just address Nia's kid and her relationship with Rex.
I am not sure how to answer that question.
No, just say it's just a simple like yes or no.
I
Like, do they bring up that topic at all? Just yes or no. Hello?
kind of ish.
Okay, so it's
Kind of.
somewhat brought up then.
You just there's a lot of implied things that you just
Well,
have
I
to
mean, there's
hear.
been a lot of implied things throughout the entire game, but yeah.
You just gotta see a lot is implied.
Okay, so when you say a lot is implied, do you mean a lot is implied about Nia and Rex, or all of the Xenoblade 2 party, or a lot is implied about Mio maybe being related to Nia? Which of the two?
One of them. I'm not gonna say which.
Well,
One
I
of them.
know that, but I'm just curious, like, which one of the
I
two is
think
implied.
you
It's
should
not
play so
spoiling
you're
anything.
surprised because
Mhm.
I would say it, but if I do, it would pretty much spoil a lot of the quest. So
Mhm.
I want
Well,
to be as
given
ambiguous as
that,
possible.
well, given that the quest itself, like right when you unlock Nia, it says make sure you explore Yonyos with Nia in your party to hear information. I'm assuming that we're gonna be going to some landmarks and that Nia is gonna give like a vague story. So I'm assuming it has to do more with kind of similar to what you explained, that we do get a little bit of more information about Shulk's party with Melia's quest. I'm assuming we're gonna get a little bit more information about Rex's party with Nia's quest.
That
And
I will say that that is correct.
that is true, you said?
Yes, but that's all I'm gonna
Okay.
say.
No, that's fine. So then I'm assuming that that's the one that they're going to focus on and that they're not really going to touch on if Mio is her daughter or not. But I also don't doubt that they will at least leave one hint that it could be her.
You gotta play the quest, my guy.
I will. But yeah, man, I guess that's basically it.
Yeah, no,
Any last
this
comments?
um, wow, I'm surprised. We literally been talking about this game for 3.5 hours. That's crazy.
I don't even know how many hours it is now.
It's been three. Looking at the stream,
I still have to eat, man. It's 1:30 here.
god damn, bro. I'm just glad I don't have
Yeah.
classes or anything to worry about tomorrow because it's Labor Day.
You're lucky because I have work tomorrow. I have to be up at 8:30 and I still gotta eat.
Well, crap. Well, guys, this has been a really long philosophical, sociological talk about Xenoblade Chronicles 3.
Well, and again, that's the best thing about it because Xenoblade or the Xeno series as a whole is very spiritual, very philosophical, and very philosophical.
And
So you guys should definitely, um, definitely like really research a lot of these topics. Just to end the video too. I believe the YouTube channel is called RetroArch. I forgot the name exactly, but they did like a full like deep dive. I think it's a little bit over 12 episodes or about 12 episodes, and each episode is like 4 hours long, and it's analyzing all of these different topics that we talked about because they're also present in Xenogears, the original Xeno game, which again, as I mentioned earlier, is part of the Xeno series. So, I mean, we just spent 3 hours talking a little bit about Xenoblade 3, and we can definitely go into much more detail. These dudes spent way over 12 hours, because again, each video is almost 4.5 hours long, and there's 12 of them. Trying to dissect and talk about all these different topics and themes. So again, the fact that we got very philosophical, very, social viewpoints and philosophy as well, just shows how talkative the Xeno series as a whole is. So it's something that you guys should definitely play, something that you guys should definitely analyze as well, and like put your own viewpoints and see what you agree with, what you don't agree with, kind of similar to what we did, and understand every culture is different, But sorry, go ahead, continue.
No, I agree. I think that just, I guess, disclaimer, we're talking about it in terms of just analyzing cultures, and there's a thing in, like, for example, your culture, you're from Brazil, you sometimes see a larger age gap in dating. I'm born and raised in America. I'm African American. Pretty much, I don't really see that age gap. But that just comes down to
Right.
cultural differences, and
Exactly.
some
And
of
also understandings of it too, like how you handle it. Like I said, it's normal for a 20-year-old to date a 15-year-old in Brazil, but it all comes down to how mature the two of them are and how the family accepts it and all that. There's like structures behind it, so it's not looked so down upon as long as everything is done the right way. So it's not like we're all barbarians or that we all, and I'm trying to say this now to defend Brazilians and many other Latin cultures, even though Brazilians don't consider themselves Latins. We're not trying to endorse or say that pedophile is okay. That is not the thing. That's not what we're saying. That is not okay. Pedophile is not okay.
oh
I'm
yeah,
making that very,
absolutely
very
not.
clear. very, very clear. The situation is between, like a 15-year-old or 20-year-old, and then like a 20-year-old to like a 30-year-old. There's different circumstances that many different factors has to be applied to be considered okay. That's what I'm trying to say, you know?
Yeah, and I mean, inherently, we're probably not there. We probably won't agree on certain those factors, but it's just about understanding the
Exactly.
context of certain things. Like it's your culture that sees this as more acceptable than my culture, and I don't have
Yeah,
to agree so much as I just understand that's your culture, and that's why it's I
exactly.
can't understand or
And
I
again,
disagree.
I just want to be, and I just want to be very, very clear when I see this, when I say this, it's that like slightly underage is slightly more acceptable. That's what I'm trying to say. Slightly more. It's a slightly more acceptable, slightly more understandable. It's not necessarily that it is 100% acceptable that everyone can do that. No, it's only slightly more. Like I said, there's a whole bunch of other factors that go into play in order to make sure that it is acceptable or not. And most of the time, it's not. I'm just trying to make that very clear. It's just that Brazilians are a little bit more open-minded depending on the situation that is presented at hand.
Agree. But well, this has been a lot.
Yeah.
Part two, we're gonna talk about DLC is gonna come out. I don't know when, but I hope you guys enjoyed
Probably
this.
sometime, yeah, probably sometime at the end of the week or beginning of next week.
Probably,
Just because this week's gonna be a little bit busy.
yeah. But if
And
you
I definitely
guys
want to make sure I beat those quests so that we can actually talk about those quests at the end of at the second part of the DLC conversation.
exactly, so I hope you guys enjoyed this. If you guys are watching this later, make sure to subscribe. Uh, Naruto, well, Project Zodiac's link's gonna be got Project Zodiac. If you're coming here from my Beyblade TikTok account, you can follow his. You can subscribe to his Beyblade channel, which is Latios 300,000 Bays. But this has been really fun. Thanks for sitting talking with Xenoblade for a few hours. But yeah,
Yeah.
I'm
And
gonna.
I mean, it was really cool. Thanks for having me again. This is my first live anything, so thank you guys for listening. For those of you that did during the live stream, and for those of you watching later, um, again, sorry if we said anything that offended anyone. I have to apologize as well, or that sorry if anyone took anything out of context when we're trying to make it very clear we're not trying to do that, or anything that was misunderstood with everybody. Again, we're trying to be as clear as we can about many different topics without creating controversy. Again, if you guys misunderstood something or misinterpreted something, I am sorry. We're just trying to be very
Comment.
careful about
If
these
you have
things.
anything to say,
But
comment. We will respond.
yes, yes, we will try to be civil. Please don't attack the comment section about these more taboo topics that we talked about, because that comment section could get very ugly very fast, especially because it is the internet and people don't tend to be civil during comment sections. So any conversation that gets posted, I do ask that T-Flame does block those particular comments for anything that is more taboo related, that could cause an argument, just to protect the comment section as well. Also, so yeah, just thank you guys for listening in. But I do also ask, if you think that it is related to one of the taboo topics, but that isn't going to cause any chaos, then you should leave it so that people could read it to hear somebody else's point of view of what they think about these topics as well. Um, but yeah, guys, thank you so much for having me as well, T-Flame. And honestly, like I said, I gotta be working at 8:30 in the morning. It's 1:40 right now in the morning, and I still gotta eat. So thank you. I'm gonna go and get food.
All right, I'm
We'll
gonna
definitely talk next time, right?